All right. So much for that intro. Hey guys, welcome to Great Train Layouts Live. I'm your host, Nico Zarak, and we are once again in Trains with a Z, a Railroad Simulator 19 to work through the magic of pre-visualization to bring layout track plans to life. And I need to mute myself because I'm hearing myself through something. Oh, I think I know what I'm... Yep, I need to close that tab. Audio issues. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us tonight. I see a number of you in the chat already. Hey, Rudy. Hey, Kevin. Hey, White Star, J Train. Glad that you guys are along for the ride and appreciate having you in the chat to offer your comments, your questions, and suggestions. And today we've got a cool project lined up. This is another layout commission. This one is from Shawn of Shawn's Trains here on YouTube. You can check out his model railroading content, but he approached me about bringing to life the Gulf Sub, a fictional railroad, fictional place. And this is the track plan as it exists as a 2D sheet of paper. Well, obviously it's already in the sim, but we'll call it a 2D sheet of paper because that's kind of what it is. This is track plan is actually originally the 3rd Street Industrial District track plan from 48 top-notch track plans by Bobby Hayden. We've got a 2 by 10 foot HO scale plan here. Switching is the name of the game, but there's something funky about this one that I wonder if you guys see. What do you notice about this plan that's funky? And there might be a few things, but there's one thing I'm looking for in particular. So we're going to see how much work we could get done on this today. I'm hoping that we can at least get the bare bones of it in place as far as buildings placed, track laid, and just everything squared up so that when it comes time to play trains, we've got something to work with. Before we get into today's stream, though, I want to thank today's sponsor, and that sponsor is Jointed Rail. You can play with the best for Trains with a Z. Go to jointedrail.com. They are also supplying tonight's motive power for the play session, and we've got a cool surprise in store for you with that. Yes, Kevin, 3 intros, the fun of having audio issues. So we're gonna start by getting some of the track laid, but do chime in if you notice what's funky about this. So, this is cropped to the 2 by 10. The numbers that you see here are references. This is one of those plans where the layout designer actually selected specific kits, which I like that because then, given that this is a real track plan or nobody's done this one for one, it kind of gives me a sense of what they had in mind. That said, this plan is more early diesel era, and we're going to be doing it as late diesel era. So that is going to make some slight changes with the feel of this. So let's get to the track lane. We're going to go with a 112-pound rail. Obviously, an HO, that'd be maybe around code 70. I think you could probably put code 83 in here if you wanted, but we'll go with code 70. And right now, we're just going to get these lines traced up. We're going to get this extending off the sides. In talking with Shawn, who's commissioned this, he said that it can be... the scenic area should fit 2 by 10, but the expansion of how to run on and off could go out either way. So we're going to extend both sides of it to have a little bit of running room going off board both ways. And if you are interested in having a track plan commissioned to be live streamed on the show to make its way onto what makes this layout great, just to help with your model railroading endeavors, feel free to contact me. I've got a link in the description of this video for where you can reach out to me, and I'd love to help make your pre-visualize your ideas. Okay, I think some people are getting it. So RWS Baden points out, what is the grade on the downhill section? Looks very steep. Yes, you've picked up on it. What's going to make this plan funky is the fact that we've got this over and underpass where the track crosses over itself. And in 10 feet, that is going to be tight. Is it possible? Well, we'll see. This is the trick with some of the older track plans where people were just sort of sketching out ideas and, hey, let us see if this actually works. Because if nobody built it, then there's not necessarily a good sense of whether or not the track plan will actually be feasible. And grades are going to be the big challenge on this one. Is being able to make this track go underneath itself. So that's what we're going to be finding out tonight. Game plan, as always, but for those of you who are new, welcome. Game plan is we build the track plan for a couple of hours, and then around 9 o'clock Eastern, so 2 hours into the stream, we're going to play with it. So we get to see how it runs. And this is going to be a fun one to run. I can already tell there is a lot of switching potential with this. We're going to have to clean up this switch because that curve is spicy, as the kids say these days. I don't know where spicy came from. Spicy makes me think of spicy meatball, but that's what the kids say, or so I'm told. So we'll go with that being a spicy switch, but we're making it less spicy. I had a good spicy chicken. I mean, it wasn't hot spicy, but I had a good chicken for dinner today. It had a lot of spices. Shout out if you had a good dinner as well, or whatever time of the day it is for you. I don't know if I like that alignment. I kind of want the track to go straight through here, so I'm going to try and see how feasible that is. It looks like it was placed with the mind of some sort of Y switch, but I just don't like that. It's weird. This is where, as much as I love Trains with a Z, if you were to do this, it's worth doing an intermediary stop with any rail, because then you know the exact switches you need and so forth. Train Z, as we've discussed before, the one challenge with it is the fact that you could create geometry of any size, which is great, except that it may not allow you to do things that are it may allow you to do things that are not actually possible in the real physical world. So something to be mindful of. But this is really about just illustrating the concept. What the grades information is going to be accurate, though. And when we get into playing with the grades, you'll see how important that is. We played with that in the Commonwealth route a couple of months ago when we were building that and we were trying to figure out what the grade profiles were there. Let's see. How to modify track plan for late diesel era. Spike / glue down flex track in all track locations and tear out the rails like a zipper, leaving only the ties behind. I mean, you kind of could. This is pretty packed track-wise, but I suppose if you wanted to make things harder on yourself and maybe take out like this spur, like this little connecting piece here, that could be one way of going about it. So we're just going to lay down all the track as a flat entity, and then we're going to add our grade profiles later. I find that's an easier way to kind of split the work out. Again, I appreciate you guys joining tonight. I hope that you are having a fantastic May, wherever you may be. And I hope that whatever projects you're working on, whether they be train layouts, real trains, or anything else, are going well for you. Feel free to share in the chat whatever you have going on. Always curious to see what the community's up to. Okay, so this is scenically we're going for industrial park. This is going to be kind of an industrial park in transition where there's some older industries with some newer. That's what I'm envisioning for this. But that's the fun of pre-visualizing, is just getting to see how does this actually play out. And this plan in particular, it's something different. I can't see that there's a ton of plans that within 10 feet are going over themselves. So that's going to make for a fun and interesting challenge of things. So we'll get that switch set up here. J-Train, watching you and running Train Z as well. Happy to be background entertainment while you're doing your own Train Z route building or running of trains. It's a fun game. It's great to. I've been on the road a lot these past couple of weeks, and I haven't been able to enjoy the sim, but it feels so good to be back in here and working with these tools. And we'll create switches like so. And another sort of interesting profile of switch. We'll go for something like this. I want to make sure the frogs stay in there because that's part of the scenic charm of it. Yeah, I like how that's looking. This also, we got some street running in here. I mean, that's going to be really cool. And this is, you wouldn't have to do it as street running, but we're going to do it as street running. Street running is awesome. How do you make the stream thumbnail if you're building the route live? Good question. And the answer to that is because I've done a little, before I started the stream, and I did this with both the Commonwealth Railway and the Kootenay Lake Navigation Company as well. And that is that I will do some work in advance. Namely because, as you guys know, I try to keep my shopping to a minimum as far as finding building assets and things like that that'll work. I don't want to waste your time with trying to scroll through and find buildings to download from the download station for Train Z. So for me, I'll do some work in advance to see it, maybe because I'm curious about how the track's going to play out a little bit, as well as to shop for some of the buildings. And with this design, I pretty much have all the buildings selected, so it's just going to be going through the list and placing them. And that way we get to focus more on actually seeing the thing come to life. There's a time and a place for experimenting with shopping for buildings, and we might find ourselves still doing that, but I want to make sure that you guys are getting the most out of this, because even though we're building a very specific plan, I'm hoping that you learn things out of watching this that could apply to your own model railroading or your own Train Z route building. And watching me shopping for buildings is probably not that. John Overman, happy to be watching after a long day of work. Well, I'm really glad to have you on board, John, and I'm glad that this serves as a nice respite for you. We aim to please. We aim to make things nice and easy and relaxed around here. There's too much excitement going on in so many corners of life. It's nice to just take a step back and say, I'm just going to play with some trains. And it's so much fun to have you guys as company and talking with you, and I hope you're learning from it. I hope you're entertained by it. If you are, and you have the means to do so, I encourage you to support my creative endeavors, both this and the Roundhouse podcast, through Patreon. Go to patreon.com/the Roundhouse. For as little as $1 a month, you're going to help make these things happen. At $5 a month, you're getting early access to episodes of the podcast and what makes this layout great. And the benefits only go up from there. So I encourage you to check that out. And if you don't have the means to support financially, that's totally cool. I get that. And if you could just share this with other people, if you think this is cool, if you think that folks in your area and your model railroading club might find this interesting, just getting the word out, I appreciate that too. Thomas, since you asked, to working on taking the Dry Brook and Esopus Valley from approach medium and moving into the 21st century. From what I've seen of that route, it is a very nice one. Filled up my water bottle a bit too big, or too much. Okay. So, there's our track. Easy peasy, beautiful model railroad. And I would love to see somebody figure out how to make this diamond work in real life. Obviously, that's not what we're doing here. This is going to be underneath that. So, if we go back to the base maps, you will see that according to the original track plan, this upper line is crossing over at 3.5 inches. And the line underneath is at 0. Well, that makes the line underneath easy. Here's where we're gonna get into playing with the grades, and this is going to get interesting, so hang on tight. First, we'll set all of this track up at 3.5 feet, just because that way then we've got that set. And for HO, that's going to make sure that we have enough room to cross it. Now, if you were doing this in N scale, obviously your grades are going to be looser because you don't need to have 3.5 feet or 3.5 inches for that clearance, but for HO we do. And we like a challenge here on Great Train Layouts Live, so we're going for a challenge. Height is going to be 7.7. Why the heck 7.7? Well, if you're used to working with trains with a Z, you know that it works in meters for height. So if you do the math, convert HO into real scale, and then convert your feet to meters, you end up with 7.7. And that's how we make sure we get enough clearance to work over that. World's greatest flex track right here. So flexible, we have even flexible switches. So we're gonna see if we can just make these 3 points 7.7. Now we're gonna have to start going down. And I know from experimenting with this already, it's gonna be steep. There's not really much we can do. So we're gonna be going to the max. We're gonna be doing 4% grades. And that is severe, but that's what we're going to have to do to make sure that we drop enough. Think of this like a switchback where we got to drop it down between this point here and these switches, and then it levels out here, and then it's going to have to drop again as soon as it's crossed over the diamond here. Is going to drop down and keep going down. Probably again level out for the switch here. And then drop down to make that final grade here. So we're going for the max. We're going for 4%. And that is steep. That is very steep. But given that we're doing switching, we're not talking about running long trains for long distance. We will make that work. So that middle track ended up being a bit lower. So we're just going to take the height of this. And we're just going to apply that to these others just to make it a bit more consistent. And we'll need to lower that switch point a bit there. As I say, this is going to be interesting. I mean, as you know, last time on the show, we were working on the Conrail P&L secondary branch line. And that was a nice break as far as having nice, easy, flat track, no grades on that anywhere. And now we're back in the thick of it. We are doing grades and some very tricky, tight grades. Trying to get that consistent. We'll hash that out a little bit more once we put the terrain in to make sure that that's even across the 3 tracks. Sean McGrath, excited to see this track plan. Me too. This is one of those that I look at and I go, okay, this is gonna be funky to play with because the track work here is pretty bananas in a good way. I don't think it's too much. It's very easy to overstuff a plan like this with too much. I think when we actually realize this visually, it's gonna be nice. It's gonna be nice and clean. Let's see. Now we've got this switch coming up here, so how do I want to handle that? I think I'm going to work with the outside track first. So we've got that dropping down 4%. I'm going to keep the grade consistent, so we're going to make that point the same, which is also probably going to make this point the same, and then we will hone in these points here. They're not going to be this, but we will adjust them to what they need to be to make them fit the plan. And Sean is with us tonight. So Sean is the person who commissioned this track plan into being. So I encourage him to chime in if he sees something that he does or doesn't like. But also, if you are watching and you're like, hey, I have a great idea for what could go here or there, do share that, because I'm always open to ideas and suggestions. How did we get to that funky thing? Oh, I guess we'll need that to continue dropping down. This is a lot of, as I say, this is a lot of playing and kind of, okay, let's see how this actually plays out. And we pretty much have to, this can drop down a bit, but having this diamond be at the correct height and cross at the right level is going to be key. This is definitely one that, if you're building something like this, I think making sure the grades are feasible is a big component. I'm not sure that Mr. Bobby Hayden, when he designed this, I'm not entirely convinced he fully thought through the nature of these grades, because technically they're possible, and they should be possible when realized, but it is interesting, shall we say. It is interesting. Oh, and see, we've already gone too steep on the grade. I don't want to push it to 5%. That just feels a bit much. Let's switch that to -4. See, I will admit, like, this was one, and part of why I was, when I was doing this, I contemplated, well, maybe I'll lay the track in advance, is that this is a tricky one to do track-wise. But I thought, no, I do want to show the process of laying the track, because I do think that there's a lot to learn through it. The track work is a key component of what makes this plan great. I do think it's a great plan. I think it's an interesting challenge, don't get me wrong, but I think there is something to it. I think it is very I think there's a lot going on for a little. And I just love the fact that you get these elevation changes. And that does help to make this feel more dynamic. 5% is doable, according to Sean. Well, if we have to go to 5, we will. I'm trying to keep it around 4 just to see if we can make that work. We might do a little bit of 5 in this section. Part of it to keep in mind, too, was going to be tricky, even in real life. So let's say, you build this in real life and it works. Keep in mind, you might need, like, little pieces of wood to keep your freight cars from rolling, because on a 4% grade, without handbrakes, those cars are going to want to roll. So that's part of why I'm trying to not be too crazy with grades, is because I'm mindful that, yes, in the sim, there are handbrakes. The cars will stop where you want them to, but that is not true in real life. Yeah, the dynamic track's kind of doing funky things, but that looks better. Trying to get that wiggled out. And we may not get this perfect. I may have to finesse this a bit more in the after doing the live stream. And as you guys know, all of these projects that we do here on the show will eventually be available for download on some actually they'll be available for download on the website, which I know every month I'm like, oh, the website's coming, it's coming. Well, here I am to say it's coming, but the website's coming, and once it's there, at least a couple of the routes that you've seen streamed, like the Kootenai Lake Navigation Company and the Conrail P&L secondary, are going to be there available for download. Okay, we're going to leave that for now. That is going to need some finessing, but we're going to leave that for now. So let us see. So this is probably the elevation that we're going to have to make that, make the crossing happen at. So let's get the height of this point, because that's, I think, the point at which everything's kind of going to, and then everything on this side's going to be, no. Wrong, but okay. So we want to get this spline point here, 5.22, and then we're applying that to everything to make sure that that crossing is all at the same elevation. And here we can just keep this track flat. That keeps it easy on us. And there's no reason to add grade here. You could, but you don't need it. From this point on, it doesn't matter if we could drop it down further because it still has to cross over this piece of track here. So, yeah, from a scenic standpoint, we're going to have to finesse that switch a bit. What is the grade? Oh, the grade's only 1% there, so we can actually lower that a bit. Well, might have to put in another spline point there, and then straighten that out, and then reduce the height to get it to work properly. If I could, there, wait. Nope, that's not the spline point I wanted to add. Did it even add the right spline point to the... It should have added the right spline point to the right track. This does get a bit dizzying when you... Oh, there we go. Does get a bit dizzying at times when you have so many spline points and so many things going on at once. Okay. And there too, like, okay, now we've got the track right, but it's got all these weird, funky undulations. We're going with it for the time being. All right. So now we've got to drop from this elevation of 5.22, and we've got to get all the way down to 0. And that is going to be steep. So let's see if we can do it in 4%. If we have to take it down to 3, or, I mean, take it up to 5, then we'll do that. But we're going to try to make it work with just what we have. Why am I clicking this over and over? Because when you have two spline points close to one another, frequently it's difficult to click on the one you actually want to get it to behave and get it to... There we are. Play out. Okay, so -4. Oof, that's probably too high as it is. Which leads us into a question of if we could drop this crossing down even a bit more. Let's see what the grades actually come to when we're looking at this stretch. So this is actually only 2% here. Like this is, I'm seeing like 3, 2. So maybe we could get away with lowering these a bit more. These points just a touch. And then that'll give us a little bit more to work with elevation-wise. And obviously, like, you can put switches on grades. I'm kind of avoiding it partially just because of how the track works and looks, but there's certainly no reason why you couldn't just have a switch on a grade. Just make sure your track work is really solid, because if you're doing switches and curves on grades, you really want to make sure it's tight so that you're not running into issues with cars derailing and that type of thing. Let's see if we could drop this down a bit more. So now the grade is showing at, yeah, 4.1, which is close enough to 4 that I feel it's an accurate representation. 5.28 is our height here, so now I'm going to try to apply that to our spline points in this area to get everything to line up. And they mostly do. This track, let's see what our grade is for this. 2.78. So if we lower this a bit more, and actually the spur on the side too could be lowered a bit more. And we lower this height. Yeah, that should work out okay. And this track on the side can be lowered more, but that's less important because it's not crossing over. So it can cut. And in fact, we might actually want to have it a little higher up. A, because then if it levels out, it's going to be easier to keep a car parked on there. What if the spur with the diamond was abandoned with nothing but ties, as mentioned before? Could do that. Well, so the thing with this spur, though, I'm going to try keeping it in for the time being. And the reason is because it gives you access to this freight house. It also gives you access to engine servicing facilities. We got a fuel, like in this version, they've got a yard office made out of an old caboose and a fuel tank. We're going to use more modern facilities, but I think I kind of want to keep those facilities in there. So we're going to try that, but certainly it'd be easy enough to take out the spur and make that abandoned. Because you could pretend that this is just a line that goes elsewhere and is no longer included. But we're going to leave it just for the moment. Oh, and now I'm realizing I don't have this spur in here, but fortunately that's a pretty easy one to add. I'm going to hold off on adding that for the moment, though, because I want to finish up with this grade business. So we've now got it down to a height of 5 point... How did we end up higher? Now it's showing 5.5, 5.23. So that does seem to be kind of like as low as we're going to get it. So we'll leave it at that for now. But maybe we could probably get away with lowering this diamond a bit, because if we're saying that the track could go down by 4%, which is going to be here, that's track condition. So grade -4. No, that's vertex height. -4 for grade here. And it's going to drop starting here. It'll actually end up lower than the spur here. So we can drop this down by a bit. And then what we'll do is just adjust for that and bring this up to the right height. I mean, it's still tricky because of the geometry of the thing. I don't know that we're gaining that much. We'll leave it as is. Okay, so -4 gets us to here. And if we ignore that switch for the moment and apply it to the curve, it is tight, but it is technically probably low enough to clear. And if we put in a unit, yeah, that could clear. So we'll leave it at a 4. Now we'll finesse this track in the background here, but we could get underneath that, and that works a-okay. Because what I'm envisioning for this track up here is we're going to do more of a modern style concrete deal, so it doesn't need to have a huge amount of room underneath for girders or that kind of thing. And that was a teaser for what's to come later. So rewind the video if you have to see what that is, but you'll see what that is soon enough. Now, let us get the rest of this track finessed in. So we know that there's kind of this fixed point in the sense of here's what the curve has to do to work. So now we just get this switch to line up with that. Now we should be able to just keep everything at that height for the most part. This spur might actually need to go up a little. We'll need to adjust that a little bit because this track's too high. So this is why working with switches on the downside of having all of this flexibility with regards to how switches come together in the sim is the fact that you end up having too much flexibility, and it becomes really difficult to kind of get the geometry. Like if you had a set piece that couldn't be bent, then you'd know everything's flat. But here, I could have one leg going up and one leg going down, which is not what I want. So, let's see. So we've got this height here of 2.44. And if we make... And we've got that leg where we want it. And we also have to raise this because then that piece ends up affecting the other piece. I feel like what we have to do to get it to even out is actually have this spur kind of going uphill a bit so that both of the switches are essentially going uphill. And then once it goes downhill, it can kind of balance out. That looks better. It's not 100%. We've still got a bit of a bumps-a-daisy there, but that will work enough because at least the switch is essentially a solid object now. Got that spur to what we want height-wise. Now this becomes a lot easier because with this, we could just say, okay, everything from here is going to be this. Nope, we're not laying a new section. Everything is going to be this 1.86 height, and we can just apply that to all of our pieces here, and they will all be the same height. That switch is normal. And now let's take a step back and take a look at all of this crazy track madness and what it actually means. And we'll hide the plan just to be able to see the track more clearly. So here we go. This is 3rd Street Industrial, aka the Golf Sub, in its entirety, except for the one spur, which we're going to add here in a moment. So this is why I'm a big fan of pre-visualization, because here we are about 40 minutes into the build, and we've got our track, and we can look at it, and we can see, already, we could see roughly what it's going to look like. Yes, we need buildings, and we need scenery to really get the most out of it. But if you're just trying to picture, what does this flat piece of paper look like when I actually lay the track at different elevations? Well, it looks like this. And it's cool. It's a way of having a lot of track with avoiding the spaghetti bowl factor, or spaghetti tray. More tray, because spaghetti bowl, I think of like the loops that have all of the mess of yards in the center. But here, if it could work if this was all at one elevation, there'd be nothing wrong with that. And actually, it'd be really easy, because you could take this spur here and have it cross over at this part rather than crossing underneath. And you could keep it all one elevation. But there is something to be said for the factor of having these different heights, especially having the rear lower than the background lower than the foreground. So I like that. I think that is pretty darn tootin' nifty. So last thing we're going to do, just to call it a day with the track, is going to be to add this spur in here. And that we're just going to say, okay, that's this height. It's going to go here to here. Oh, why did it do that? Why did it disappear like that? Because it's trying to lay it at a 4% grade. So we are going to set that back to 0. We are going to place this track in here. We're going to have it connect right after the diamond. And then we're going to apply this height. And there we go. Now we have all the track in there, and we can hide this. And as Sean mentioned earlier, this is a template. You could very easily say, okay, I'm going to take this siding out of service. I'm going to take this siding out of service. That's the fun of playing around with it. Sean says, I'm already glad we did this. I think this may have to be just 12 feet just for the downgrade to be realistic. I would say that it would be in your interest, partially because even if you keep the downgrade sharp, you might want to have a couple of conveniently placed plateaus so you could stick a car and know it's going to stay in place. For the sake for ease of convenience, we're going to stick with this as the track arrangement, because in Train Z we don't have to worry about the car placement. And basically, if this can be built in 2 feet by 10 feet, it can be built in 2 feet by 12 feet. You've got that 2 additional feet, and that'll allow you to ease off the grades. And I think what I would say, I mean, this is also where playtesting is going to be important, because it's one thing to look at this plan, but now that you say, okay, here's the grades, part of the question is, well, where do I end up placing cars when I'm switching this? Am I going to be in a situation where I'm constantly wanting to put cars on this steep grade here, which is always going to be steep? Like, as long as this plan is as it is, this grade's always going to be steep. And that may just be a matter of putting in wheel chocks when you're switching. And maybe that's part of what you simulate, is saying, I'm going to simulate putting hand cars on brake by putting wheel chocks under them. That's part of the value of play testing. I mean, this is all fun. It's all fun and games, and it is. But there is real significance to being able to say, does this play well? And you even if you built yourself a 3D model, because I know that's a popular thing, still not going to answer the question of where do you end up sticking your cars when you're switching them. Okay, so now that we have this in place, next step is we're going to place the buildings, and we're going to do that next. The ground technically is next, but I want to get the buildings out there, and then we'll get the ground, and then we'll adjust the buildings and the ground together. We could really be doing this either way. So another benefit of Train Z is that you can organize all of the millions of assets you could download into these pick lists. So this is where I keep track of projects that are going on. So here is where I've got all of my buildings allocated. So these numbers, as I said earlier, correspond to buildings. So number 1 is conglomerate aggregate, which is a scratch build aggregate loader. Here's what I've got for that. Looks nice and modern. We're just going to leave it sitting there for the time being. This is just kind of roughing it. These will go more in place once we get the terrain done. Number 2. So this is number 2 is a scrapyard. We'll worry about that later. We've done scrapyards before. Nothing fancy there. Number 3 is going to be the Chilsum refrigerated warehouse, which is another scratch built kit. For that, we've got we're going to do kind of our own form of kit batching digitally. We've got this sort of warehousey asset, and we're going to build 2 of them, and they're going to go like this. We're going to just rough them for now. Later, we'll get them looking nice and pretty. Number 4 is the grain exchange, which is an actual kit. Again, from a building standpoint, it's kind of nifty to say, like, if I was doing this era, these are the exact kits I would buy. Yeah, we'll leave that for the moment. This is what I selected for this. This one is not rail served, and I think it's good to have a variety of rail and non-rail industries. This is just backdrop. So we've got that guy there. Number 5 over here is going to be, that is going to be the Bank of Victoria Falls. So it's another non-interactive building, essentially. And that's another one that's just going to disappear into the backdrop. And we're going to rough it about here. You can see where the street is. Number 6 is in the foreground. So this is where we're going to be tweaking the plan a bit. So this is, according to the plan, the Gristle Packing Company, which is a slaughterhouse. Now, for modern running, you wouldn't exactly have a slaughterhouse being served by rail. So instead, and you can see how here's the plant, and then you've got the pens for the cattle. So we're going vegetarian here. This is going to be a cereal, a cereal mill. You could even call it a general mill, a general cereal mill. Read into that what you will, but we're just going to put that as a placeholder. So now you've got an industry that can be served. Could be it could be sending out cereal by boxcars and taking in wheat by rail, and we might put some sort of silos over here, something along those lines. Rudy Gardley's telling me to get out. I'm afraid I can't get out of this little box. Sorry, but thank you for your acknowledgement of that. Number 7 is the it's a furniture company. And a furniture company can certainly be a furniture company. That we can keep the same. What building did I have looked at for that? I actually have a furniture company looked out for that. Except this one's called Bravman Furniture Company. So this is where we're getting into the kind of mixture of old and new. And you could take this however you want. If you want this to be a totally modern industrial park, this plan lends itself to that. I like playing... It's a transition era of industrial park, you could say. And I just like this building. I like the loading platform. The loading platform does go off the edge a bit. Do I mind? Not enough to really change the asset. So we're going with that. Number 8 is the ISP company, which is Industrial Strength Paint, which is also something where we could just roll with that for what it is. So for this one, we've got the sort of office building of the paint, and maybe the plants further back. There's a lot of ways you can do this. playing with the backdrop. But we've got the foreground structure here, and then we're going to have some tanks. And this is why, as you can see, this is why I love working with these pre-made assets. It's just so nice to be able to drop and go and be like, hey, here's what I want, and here's where it goes. So we've got actually a couple of different types. I think we're just going to stick with these for now. We'll play around more with that once we actually have the elevation in place. Then, I believe that adjacent one is going to be number 9. It is, and that's townhouses. This is another creative change. I decided to make it tanks, and these ones are not served by rail. They fit the footprint close enough, and you can't. And tanks are prevalent in industrial parks. So you could make this served by rail. You could make it part of the industry here. In this version, it's not. You'll see what we do in just a second. But I like the look of that. I also like the fact that this is on an angle. Note that we're trying not to have any or as little as square with the actual rectangle as possible, because that makes it feel more realistic. If you had your lines parallel with your table, it's gonna feel a little bit more contrived. Having these natural angles, so much more to play with. Number 10 is a freight station, and that we're going to keep as a freight station. Simple. 11 and 12 are engine servicing facilities. What we're going to do there, we're going to have a sanding tower. And maybe we'll put it over here so that it has reason to go over both of the tracks. I mean, obviously you could have one with one spout, but just going through for the time being. We've got sanding, roughly about here, I suppose. And then this, number 12, obviously a former caboose, yard office. Yeah, it's even so specific, it says you should get an Athearn caboose. Which could be nifty. You could do caboose, you could do boxcar, but we're going to do fuel tanks because I feel like I like the idea of this being sort of. There's a lot of different ways you could interpret this. I took those tanks. Did I want to take those tanks, or did I have other tanks? Let's see if I've got something else that makes sense to just drop there. Oh, I know what I had in mind for this. So I was inspired recently by a trip to Memphis, where I was watching the city of New Orleans come in, and it's a crew change point for Amtrak. And as a crew change point, engineer gets off, new engineer gets on, but they don't have fuel facilities. Every night that the train comes in, about 10:20 at night, fuel truck drives up, and it's just like you would have at your gas station. It's just the driver takes the hose out and just pumps the diesel right into the tank of the P-42. So, being inspired by that, I thought maybe these guys don't have their own facility, which, I mean, admittedly, maybe feels like, okay, but then why do they have the sanding tower? And maybe that's overkill. So maybe we won't even do the sanding tower. We will have a fuel truck. So when these guys, and there's a number of railroads that have scheduled fuel trucks that just arrive and service when they need to for a variety of reasons. So these guys, fuel truck. We might put a trailer for a yard office or something like that, but I know we're gonna have to play around with some of these elements a bit, so we'll leave that for now. Let's see. 13 at the end of the track is a loading ramp. I actually didn't save a ramp, but if we search ramp, we should be able to find something pretty quickly that we could just stick at the end. This is a wood ramp, which, yeah, maybe it's a little too informal. Maybe needs something more like a concrete ramp. Let's see, truck ramp. Yeah, we'll go with that for now. That's a decent filler. So that way you could roll off trailers if you wanted to. At the very least, it's an end of track. Play with that as you will, but we've got a ramp in there. And number 14 over here, that is a station. That's a passenger station. Now, this is another case where you could make your station active and served by Amtrak. If you're sticking with this era of modern, you could make it an Amtrak served station, which could be fun to be able to have more ways of having through traffic, a la sort of the British designs. Our station's going to be out of use, but scenically, it's going to pretty much be the same whether it was in or out. We'll still have room for a parking lot and so forth. Just you won't see all the nice Amtrak signs and whatnot. John Overman, that refueling process definitely sounds interesting. I think so. It's a way of drawing distinction and making it modern. The fact that this is I'm kind of trying to create this fictional history for this fictional railroad because I asked Sean about it, and he mentioned that it was like former Milwaukee Road territory that's being taken over by CSX. But it sounds like it's in a transition state, and I drawn to the idea of like some sort of regional line that's just moving and are just starting up, and ergo they don't have a lot of facilities in place. And so much of model railroading is the stories that you build around what you do. And especially if you're doing something fictional, great to build stories. We talked about that with Commonwealth, and it's true here as well. So we've got this station that, in this case, we're saying it used to and is no longer served. But again, we could run an Amtrak train through here, and it doesn't really change things too much. You can see the space here is kind of tight, so we're going to probably end up moving the spur back. But we'll do that once we take care of the scenery. So, last but not least, we have number 15, which is the Mildew Malting Company, which is a Suncoast grain elevator. Now, this we're going to cheat a little bit. And I'll tell you why we're going to cheat. And the reason we're going to cheat is because the kit that it's calling for is very similar to this building here. But this building is a little too big. That said, I still want to use this building. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this building, and we're just going to kind of tweak the plan to the building. Now, the reason I don't feel guilty about doing this is because it doesn't change whether this works. Like, it doesn't change how the grades work or anything like that, because you still have to get down to 0 to fit under these tracks. Once you're down here, what happens with this spur? I mean, if you were doing an L-shaped layout, this spur could lead to a whole other side of switching on this leg if you were to make that a full L. So we're going to kind of go outside the bounds a little bit, but I don't feel guilty about it because it's keeping it relatively the same. So we're going to kind of place it here, and we're going to take the track. Now, the track on this building is set to go over here, but I'm going to ignore that because I want this part of the building to face over here first. And also because then when we're spotting cars, we have more room behind us. So there's room for spotting 2 or maybe 3 cars rather than just having one at the very end. So we are going to take this track and we're going to extend it to about here. But as you see, it really does not change the nature of the plan at all. Everything still has to fit the same way. And there's our buildings. And we'll once again turn off the base maps just to see what that looks like and how those buildings look together. And this is another advantage of pre-visualization. Now, yes, now if you're into 3D modeling, you're at an advantage because you could take, if you're like planning kits. So let's say you were doing this plan and you wanted to use the exact buildings they call for. Well, then you could 3D model those buildings and then see what they look like together. And we did that for Kootenai Lake Navigation Company. We had Rico build the specific buildings it was calling for. So being able to see how your buildings are to one another is really great. Oh, hey, Justin, glad to see you in here. Thank you once again to our sponsor, Jointed Rail, for their for helping to bring this stream to you tonight. So, I don't know you guys, but so Sean clarified modern day Milwaukee Road interchange with CSX. Okay, so so certainly that, one could say the Milwaukee Road lives, and this would fit that. We're playing off the Gulf theme, and you'll see where that comes into play a bit later. We're halfway through the build. We've got our buildings. We've got our track. So now we are going to do our landscape. Which, well, actually, I say these things with clarity, and then I'm like, well, actually, one other thing, just because I want to get this in there. We can play with the height of the base maps to reference this later. But I do want to put the... Well, do I want to put the road in? Because I know what it's going to do anyway. Yeah. Okay. Sticking with our original guns, we are going to work on the terrain. Snapping the terrain to the track. Nice, easy way of just getting the initial bits in there, and then we'll fine-tune it from that. Ooh, and hence why we're going to need to fine-tune, because we're going to need to work on this area a little bit. But that won't be too much of a problem. That was interesting. We'll come back to that section. And that looks about right there. We'll keep snapping to here. Just getting the easy stuff out of the way, and then we'll go in and get the details right of it. Never been to Milwaukee. I feel like Milwaukee is something of a model railroad capital of the world, with Kalmbach and Walthers and all them in that general area, but I've never been... No, that's not true. Well, once when I was a wee laddie, I did go to Milwaukee, but that was many a moon ago. I've not been for quite some time. We're gonna get this level because that's gonna be easier to straighten out at that point. And then getting these sections raised up. And there we go. Kinda. All right. Let's get this fine-tuned. We're going to get the height off of here, and we're just going to manipulate the grid by hand to get close to where that track begins. And then we can also go down to 0 and H. Nice. That way we can kind of get it to fit as we want. This is tight, but we can also play around with that and maybe have an embankment or something like that to fine-tune that further. Just to give some visual sense of why there's this here. And now we'll go back up to the top, and we'll get this section here. We might... that's gonna be... yeah, we'll lower that section down there. This will be easier to visualize once we put the bridge in place. Now we will get this section fine-tuned a bit. And right about there. And this is where we'll do a lot of playing with embankments and that kind of thing, because the grid can only be so specific, the resolution of it, if you will, because you have to work off of these individual points. You can't modify in between. An advantage of model railroading, obviously you're not working off of a grid system, but there's ways around that, and we'll be working with that when we get to the scenery stage. We'll put some embankments in there, and that'll even that out nicely. Potato Head looks amazing so far. Glad you're liking it. This is there's a lot going on with this visually, and I do like that about it. There's definitely a lot here to play with, and I like a good root building challenge. So if you guys, as I say, if you've got a layout that you're trying to work on, maybe you're like Rudy was when we did the Conrail P&L secondary. You've got your track laid down, but you're kind of uncertain about what you want to do for actually for buildings or scenes. My contact info is in the video description, and I encourage you to reach out to me. Or Great Train Layouts is on Facebook. You can reach out to me there. I'd be more than happy to help you make the most of the space that you're working with. That's going to work. There's actually a different version of the track that has ballast. In fact, it's this one. So if we just delete that and place this version, then height, and then straighten that out. Now we actually have the ballast going all the way down. Nope, that's not the right version. We need the terrain ballast. That's the one I was looking for. Certain track shapes just comes down to whether the track has ballast that's only a little bit deep or a lot deep. And as you can see, this is as deep as we need it to go. How deep is your ballast? How deep is your love? How deep is the ocean blue? We're going deep tonight, as you can see. So this is going to be where the unloading of the wheat and ag for the cereal mill, the general cereal mill is. Hello, Robloxian Rail fan. Glad that you could join us tonight. What else do we have going on terrain-wise? We need to... let's get this fixed up a bit too here. And obviously we're going to want to work on segues between scenes as well. We'll need to see how things play out. Some of that is going to be dictated with how the road comes to play and so forth. But we'll get the major bits worked out, and then we can tweak it more when it comes to how the road interacts with the track, interacts with the buildings. And then over here, we're working with slightly different elevation at this point for our street and this building scene. And that's the height that we're working on pretty much going forward for this section here. And our scrapyard, which is going over here. There we go. And what else should we have? That's most of what we have. This is... yeah, there's going to be a lot of using embankments because I'm pretty sure our road is going right here, which is right next to our track. So we're going to definitely probably be putting the track on some kind of stone embankment and then immediately dropping down to road height. But are the big kind of placement of hills and so forth, is that all accurate? I would say yes. We don't have any levitating track except for where this bridge is going in. So there we have it. That is, and so this is now one more step closer on that pre-visualization front of trying to make sure that this works, not just not just in terms of does the track fit, not just in terms of do the grades make sense, but also in terms of does the scenery fit? Does it look good? And I think this looks pretty good. I like how tight everything is here. This is really nifty. How tight everything's fitting in this space. Definitely a consideration, and I don't think it's a deal breaker. But you might want some uncoupling tracks because you're going to be reaching over the bridge, which works because if you just have a bridge there, you're not likely to hit a building or something like that. I would not make this building too tall because you might need to get back here. But fortunately, everything is in such a way that reaching shouldn't be an issue. And if we use a ruler to measure how far that switches from the edge, we will see that it is 49 meters. Okay, that is great. But we cannot reach 49 meters. Well, let's edit the route. Let's make it imperial and let's make it HO scale. And then we see it's 1.8 feet. So that's 1.8 feet from like where your hand is. Because keep in mind, the edge of the layout is right at the track. So if we measure from the edge of the layout, which is more like here to where these switches are, that is a reach of 1.3 feet. 15 inches. That's doable. Okay, so we have 50 minutes left as far as the build time is concerned before we get to play time. So what do we want to do next? Let's get the road figured out because that's another sort of what I'm going to call architectural element. My goal for tonight is going to be to get I want to get the road in place. I want to get this bridge done just so the track isn't floating, and I want to get some basic ground textures. There's going to be maybe we'll get some embankments. We'll see how we do. Thank you, Virtual Railroader Academy, for watching tonight. I'm glad that it looks amazing to you. I'm really happy with how this looks. This is a nifty one. Okay, road time. So let us pull up a yarn road, and yarn stands for yet another road network. It's a system used in Train Z. So we're going to go with bare roads for now. We might do some with line painting later, but right now I just want to make sure everything fits properly. Now, according to the plan, we've got Commerce Street, which is this street coming from the left, the bottom left. It goes under, we've got our first bit of street running. It's going underneath this bridge. We're going to kind of try to line it up so it's straight with that piece of the track there. And we'll do height adjustment and so forth later. Right now, I'm just kind of trying to make sure it's going to fit. Now, what happens with the road, this is where, again, from a route construction standpoint, you're going to want to think out how you do this, because according to this, the switches are embedded in the road. And we can absolutely do that, and we'll certainly do it for the sake of, for what we're doing here in the sim doesn't care. But when you're building this and you're having to be mindful of the flanges, I would say this is a road you're going to want to build out of paper or flat material. I would not be messing around with the messies. Messing around with the messies. You know what I mean. Plaster and that kind of thing. I think you want to keep it easy on yourself for if you're going to have switches embedded in the road. From here, the road is embedded. The street running continues through this part of the street. And then it splits off as the track curves up. This is going to be interesting. I think if we want to do it that way, we are going to have the track rise up here. That's the only way we're going to pull this off. Otherwise, we are not going to make it work. And I think that's an okay compromise to make, because I think that is reasonable, because you don't need to leave cars on this stretch here necessarily. So we'll go with that. So now it's 2.76. What's the height here? 3.28. Do I want to continue move that through here? Maybe. Let's see what that looks like from a grade leveling standpoint. Nope, not what I meant to do. I meant to do smoothing the spline height. That actually, yeah, that works. Okay. And obviously you could make the road narrower and so forth. We're gonna have the road try to parallel the track here, so that what happens is that by the time it's coming to here, it is already splitting off. Something like this, I think. And obviously, your road wouldn't have to be this wide. You could keep the street running, although I don't think it's worth it. Like, you could have this siding street running. I think we're going to make sure the street is separate from it here. Maybe we'll have it be kind of, rather than a separate track, maybe have it buried in gravel. I like that look. J-Train, how many segments will this series be? I don't know yet, because it partially depends on how much we get done tonight. I feel like it's going to end up being just this one, because I don't know if what remains is going to be worthwhile enough to do as a whole 2-hour stream. I think I might end up doing the remaining work behind the scenes. We'll see. That, and I'm eager. The next project I've got in line is it's something we haven't seen yet on the show. It's something that's rarely modeled in general, as far as the type of thing it is, let alone the actual prototype that is being modeled. So I'm sort of thinking that'll be next month's stream, but we will see. We'll see how this goes. It's an adventure. Life is an adventure, and so is what we have featured on Great Train Layouts Live. This road is going to be at an angle to keep things visually interesting. It's going to go into that building because that building is going to be behind the backdrop. We connect these two, and then... oh, that's some lovely bit of paving right there. There is our road. Roads, plural. And then the only other thing we have going on, according to the plan, there's a parking lot here. That's a teeny place for a parking lot. I think I'm going to omit that, because it doesn't make sense. Maybe you'd fit a street, and a thin street at that. Did see, where's that, like, oh, here's what I was looking for, the merge lane. Like, we could fit this, and I think that's about as much as we could fit there. We are not fitting anything wider than that. And yes, that tank is levitating the air. We'll play around with this building placement a bit. I kind of want to turn it the other way, but then the tank ends up spilling out over the track. So I think what we might end up doing, we're going to adjust it a bit, which is to say we're going to move the loader over here. It overhangs the road. That is fine. And then what we will end up doing, we're going to get the height here. And then, we don't. Actually, we might end up having it floating in midair and then doing it that way. It'll float in midair, and then we'll build an embankment and manually adjust the height to what that is. I think that is how we're going to do it. But yeah, that is how we're going to fit a road there, and that is really the only way of how we are going to fit a road there. Anything else would just not work. But I like how this looks. This could be an interesting intersection here. Could even do traffic lights and stuff like that, and maybe that's what I'll do off camera. Something along those lines. Then we'll place a bit like this. And now we just need to kind of get it to smooth a Rooney. I think it'll smooth a Rooney if we go this way. And then something like that. Yep. Yeah, there we go. As a rough placement. Now let us get that up to the right height, and maybe we can find some embankment pieces so we can start doing embankments and see how this all works. Track, we're going to move over to make work for the new placement of the loader. That way the tank is clear of the main line, and we're not fundamentally altering in the nature of the track plan. Derpy Possum, that's a smooth looking grade. David McRae, new here. Dang, that's great work. Well, I'm glad that you like it. That's the fun of this. I'd like to think that in the 2 hours we spend building, you're getting to see this whole transformation of what was just this blank sheet of paper, and now here it is. Even, you know, in its rough state, you can get a sense of what the thing's going to look like. And that's why if you're not into trains, even if you're not into train simming, just doing even this much work to just see what it looks like could be valuable. And then it's like, okay, I know how it works, and because I don't care about playing with it and so forth. It still gives you a base. I think CL wall is what we're going to go for. He has a lot of stone retaining walls, although I'd rather do something concrete. Concrete. Because we could do a stone retaining wall. Maybe we'll do a stone retaining wall for... Well, it's actually not... I was picturing this was going to need this whole retaining wall here, and it actually doesn't, because it's not really that steep at all. Unless you drop that down further. Let's have a look at retaining. Let's see where we want to go for this. Oh yeah, this will work for our needs. This will do the trick. And I might end up replacing it later, but for the sake of just, hey, this gives us a sense of what we're going for. Actually, that looks pretty cool. So I think that may end up being it in the long run as well as the short. See, now that terrain, whatever it's doing underneath, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter now, because look at that. That looks polished. I want to get this bridge in. I don't know about you guys. I want to get this bridge in, because I think that that's going to be the next bit of excitement. We're going to straighten that out. Actually, yeah. And then, well, oh, interesting. It only goes down so deep. That's a bit of a bummer. We can fix that by way of adding a second wall. But for the time being, we're just going to focus on the first layer, just to get that at the elevation we want. And putting the second round will be a finesse detail. That'll be homing it in, but we don't need that for what we're doing here. That just gives us a starting point. But that's going to look cool. Like, we do that, and then we wrap it around once more just to get it to kind of have a conclusion. And yeah. I mean, so it needs more wall space, but retaining wall number 2. Interesting. That's got stone. That could be cool for something. But this gives us our concrete wall, and then we'll just probably do a second layer of this. And maybe we'll get to that later, but I want to get this bridge in. So, what are we going to search for that? We're going to search for concrete. Because I know we have concrete. That's an interesting wall. This could be nice as a retaining wall in its own right, this concrete wall. But I don't know where I need that for now. So we'll mainly focus on bridge pieces. I think this is going to be it here, the concrete bridge 3-track. I've used this one before. I like how it looks. It's really just a case of, can it actually fit all 3 of our tracks? And I think the answer is yes. I think we actually can fit all 3 of the tracks here as we hope. So it's going to need a curve, which isn't a problem. So we've got this first section here that's straight. And then we're going to add the second section here, and that's going to be our curve section, and then a third section that just kind of serves as to anchor it straight. make sure that we like the elevation it's at. This could dip down a little bit to go underneath the ground. And we have these pillars in the way, which is unfortunate, because I really like this bridge. And it's not going to work for us scenically. Which is too bad, because that is a really cool looking bridge. Oh, well. Oh, well. That is why we have the undo button. Something else you have in Train Simming you don't have in model railroading, the all-important Control-Z. So let's see what other kinds of concrete bridges we've got that we can make work here that are going to be wide enough. The key is the width, because we've got these 3 tracks. Could kit bash something together with something like you've got these fences here, so then it's just a matter of... Actually, I like that fence. Here's me choosing a random asset, and then I'm like, oh, I actually kind of like that thing. All right, so then what do we do? Well, so we want to kit bash a bridge. Now, there's a few different ways we could do this, but I think in the that is a nice concrete wall. That might end up being what we do to complement the wall here. I'm not quite sure on that yet. I'll leave that there as a sort of placeholder. It looks a little too new with a little too old. Now this is an interest. Oh, bridge concrete. It's an interesting one. It gives us the plate we need, but not a fan of the ends. So we are. I think what we're going to end up doing is kit bashing our bridge. We're going to make our own, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. I like this, but I think this is actually too wide. I've used this material before on other layout projects, and it's a good material. But I think it is too wide for what we want to do here. Like, we've got this whole extra space. Nah. So, we're going to invent our own bridge. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take this road, and we're just going to layer it. We're going to make it into its own base layer, because the bridge needs to work from being viewed on top. It doesn't need to work so much for being viewed underneath. It also has to be viewed from the side, but there too we can work with what we need. So we're going to put 2 roads side by side, and those are going to be the bridge surfaces, essentially. I like kit bashing like this because it's a fun way of, like, I don't have what I need, and I'm not the world's best 3D modeler. I'd even barely say I'm a 3D modeler. I mean, I've done it. I'm starting to do more 3D modeling with backdrops, as you saw with Commonwealth, but that's more just like basic shape and then applying texture. The real artwork of that is the texture. The art that folks do who are actually 3D modelers, and the art that they could do in terms of the shapes they're making, now that's true 3D modeling art. And it's tough when I explain what I do in the sim to people who aren't familiar with train simulators, because in a way this is kind of a 3D modeling. Like, I'm modeling something in a virtual 3D environment, but it's not 3D modeling in the sense of I'm not creating a mesh. But how do you explain that difference to somebody who is not familiar with meshes and so forth? I do not know. It's a little tricky. Okay, there's our bridge deck. That is a bridge deck. And now remember that fence where I'm like, oh, that's actually cool, and I actually want to use that? Well, guess what? I'm actually going to use that. All hail Control-Z. Yes, Derpy, we all hail Control-Z because we all need it at some point in our lives. Truth is, I suppose we all wish at some point we could undo the things we've done. And sometimes we get that, and sometimes it's a matter of taking the decisions we've made and going forward with them. Tonight's philosophy lesson, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I love how that looks, though. That is a nice. That's the fun. Like, even if I had a bridge texture, like, that other one was nice. I mean, if I could have made that work, I would have. But I like this. This is a nice railing. So I like that a lot. Like that. That's a decent bridge. It'll look a little bit better. I'm inclined to put some kind of supports or something like that under this part of the road. I don't know quite yet what I'm going to do there. That looks like a bridge. I'm happy with it. And the key, obviously, because we have such little room to work with underneath here, if you're modeling this, keep in mind how thick your bridge is. I love a good girder as much as the next person, but you would not have room for that here. And you could do like and you can't do a Pratt truss bridge because your track's too wide. It just doesn't make sense for what the prototype is. Put a railing on the other side, and then that bit is completamente, which makes me really happy. I feel like this bridge isn't an unimportant detail. I mean, it'd be very easy to say, well, it's just a bridge, and it is. But when you take into account the totality of the scene, you realize, and you'll see this in a moment once I get this railing in place, that the bridge is kind of this big central feature of the thing. So it's not exactly unimportant. Where? Okay, there it is. Why did that do that way? Interesting. I guess that didn't. I thought it would impact it. And then there. Oh, okay, because I already did that as a thing. You realize that the bridge is very central to the scene. It's very much in the middle. So having it look good isn't unimportant. Both in terms of what we're doing here in the sim, as well as what you, how you would actually model this, or how Sean's gonna choose to model this. That's why it's not, because I don't have that straight. Switching to from talking to you guys to talking to myself, and yes, truth be told, if I wasn't talking to you guys while doing this, I could very well be talking to myself. Actually, if I wasn't with you guys, I might be listening to a podcast. What do you do when you're model railroad? Comment time. What do you do when you're model railroading or train simming, and you need some other form of entertainment in the backdrop? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you watch YouTube videos, or kind of semi-watch them? Because I've got two monitors, so I'll be train simming and I might put a video on. But something that I don't need to watch all the time, something that I can listen to and then occasionally glance over. All right, let's look at this bridge, and let's see what it does for the scene as a whole. See, that's what I'm talking about. And that's why I said it's not unimportant. Like, it may just be a boring concrete structure, but it's a boring concrete structure you want to get right. Sometimes a bridge is it's very easy to think of bridges when they're centerpieces of, say, a river scene. But here it's important. And honestly, this whole over-under thing, like, this is the model railroader shot. This is the model railroader cover shot right here. Is this over-under? You know, if this was a spotlighted layout, and like probably what I'll use for thumbnails and like, that's your cover shot, because it's the most visually diverse and kind of interesting bit. So having that bridge look good is not unimportant. So we've got the bridge in place. Yeah, we'll need to work on the approaches. We've got 25 minutes left. I kind of want to do ground textures. I don't think we need to... I don't have much in the way of remaining... don't have much in the way of remaining terrain or scenery. I mean, there's fine detailing to be done for sure, but in terms of the broad strokes, I think we're getting it pretty much. I'm sensing time for a short break. So I'm going to leave you for the moment on this image of the layout. And when we come back, we're going to start doing some terrain texturing and getting this to look more like a finished product. Stay tuned here on Great Train Layouts. And welcome back to Great Train Layouts Live, where we are working on the Gulf sub, which is a fictional switching layout of 2x10 Milwaukee Road interchange with CSX. And before the break, I asked you guys what you like to do when you're working on a model railroading project and you want some entertainment in the background, or train simming. And from NS37 podcasts. And if you're in need of a good podcast, shameless self-promotion, check out the Roundhouse podcast. You can watch it on YouTube, but also wherever you get podcasts, you can download it to your phone. And our most recent interview was with Carolyn Hoffman of Operation. She's the president of Operation Toy Train, and she also is involved with the Port Jervis Transportation History Center, which is having their grand opening launch event this coming Memorial Day weekend in Port Jervis, New York. And Sean, who's commissioned this, mentions that he likes watching videos of rail fanning from when the Milwaukee Road was still around. It's great background noise and gives you the sounds you want to hear while operating. Yes, sometimes it's great to put on YouTube videos just to have that kind of general sound ambience. Okay. So two things I want to put walls in because I kind of want to frame this in terms of here's the boundaries of the layout. We're going to put the base maps back on, and we're going to go ahead and switch to our walls layer. Again, one of the things I love about train simming and working trains with Z is the Photoshop style layers system. And so we're going to get ourselves a nice blue sky backdrop. And I think this one will do what we need. Maybe. If I can place it in the world. Why? Oh. I was placing backwards, and it only is visible one direction. So here we are. We'll make it so that it clears the... So we're cheating by extending the boundaries a bit this way, but that's just so that we can include the entirety of that building there. It doesn't change the nature of how the track fits at all. And then we'll draw one wall along. Oh, other way. We'll draw one wall from here to here. And this will kind of help us when we're thinking of framing in what we have going on as far as scenes with the scrapyard and that kind of stuff. And then one more wall, and that's going to go from here to... Oh, need to go that way. From here to here. Wow, that's a really tall one. I'm not sure if I want something that tall, because I do want to kind of see the backdrop. So I'm going to bulk replace it. Rather than having to replace them, I'm just going to do a bulk replace. And we're going to take this wall or backdrop, and we're going to replace it with, I think, spline number 3, no shadow. Because that's not quite so tall. It's also a bit grayer, which I like. I think that's a bit more subtle. Begin, yeah, replace it wherever. That's better. Okay, so this gives us a little bit more construct when we're thinking about the boundaries of what we're working in. And obviously, in terms of design, you could have all sorts of city buildings and the like. There's certainly a lot of room for that. But for the time being, we're just going to leave it nice, clean blue for ease of sick and construction. Turn off the base maps again, then we can actually look at what that looks like. And, you know, I think that gives us a good sense of how the scene is contained. We'll get even more of a sense of that once we do the dig holes and we add the fascia, but that's going to be another day. Today, just trying to get some ground textures done. Only thing I want to do, I want to get this road... I want to get the road finessed before we're doing terrain. Just to make sure that we can kind of see how it all works, how it all fits. Trying to get the street running portion sorted out. Does that mean I need to lower that? Yes. Yep. So if we lower like such, then we get to see the street running portion curve up like that. And then we'll raise this. So this is the... that's the curved section. Then over here is where it has the... Yeah, I like that. Okay. And then this is where it starts to emerge. We could have this also part of the... Choices. I kind of want to... Yeah, I want to have the road split sooner. So I'm thinking something like this is a good way of doing it. And then we'll adjust the height so that all the rails appear. And then... Trying to hide the ties that appear there. Yep. And... making sure that the road is approximately level with the railhead. And the reason I'm doing that is because we're going to fine-tune the... why am I... There it is. Because we're going to fine-tune the terrain later and have it be... the track be buried in gravel and dirt and that kind of thing. So having the pavement line up with the rail actually, I think, is a good sort of border element to the rail itself. And then we'll submerge that in a moment. It curves around. It does its thing there. So we'll need to lower the terrain here. Oop, not by that much. Just to lower it enough to get it to fit nicely around the curve. And yep, I like how that looks. I like how that fits. So we've got our road in there, and I'm liking how that looks overall. Only thing I'm realizing is I probably want to... I'm going to change how this road is handled a bit. I'm going to bring it back to here. We're going to bring it up to be level with the rail, but I want to end it because I want to have it go off even, so it's going to go about to the same spline point as there, and then we add another piece, and this goes off. Actually, we'll have to add the other piece sooner so that it transitions with the track a little bit more smoothly. So yeah, it ends there. We have the track like so, and the road's there, and then now it goes straight, and boom. Ooh, oops. That has a nice clean edge to it. And I think that's going to be our roads pretty much done. Like, yeah, there's fine-tuning to do with it, but some of that I'm going to do elsewhere just so that you're still seeing the most exciting stuff. Sidewalks and street signs and all that kind of thing are going to come in a bit, come with detail. Detail pass is definitely going to be, and that's why I feel like this is probably going to be the only stream for this layout, is just because I feel like what's going to remain after tonight is detail work, but we've kind of got the big stuff visualized, and I don't know how you feel about watching detail work. I don't want to bore you with that. Let's see, looking at some of your comments, J-Train, you watch old episodes of At the Rail Yard. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad to know that they're still entertaining. Red Rosa mentions, thank you for your videos. They're relaxing, give me ideas regarding my own build. Well, so glad to hear that, and good luck with studying for your exam. Streaming in NER, I'm actually watching this whilst working on Railworks on a route. Excellent. And Derpy Possum, quite like the backdrop, almost looks like a cozy overcast. That's kind of what I'm going for. There's a lot of ways you could take this backdrop. You could have it be bright city skyline. You could have it be very gritty industrial. A lot of different ways you could go with that. Yeah, I want to get the terrain in there because I feel like, yes, there's fine-tuning to be done, but I'm liking where this is. Maybe we'll just add the embankment for the serial, for the general cereal mill, ... And that one should be pretty straightforward. Now we're just gonna raise the building up to get it to be track level. And we could actually kind of sink it, and then that way it'd be like multiple stories, and it's shallow here, but then it's deeper here. But I don't like that. I don't think that's kind of in the spirit of how it would work in my mind. The spirit of how it would work in my mind. Things you think you'd never say but end up saying. I'm going to stick with it like that. So I'm going to... Oh, I don't need that open anymore. Go back to getting this embankment, retaining wall. Hopefully throughout this I'm retaining your interest. But I'm Chain. Score 2 for the puns. On that one. And we'll get the height. What is that? Apply that over here. Yeah, that feels more accurate to what I would expect there to be. And yes, we've got this door that's facing out. I'm not quite sure how I want to handle that, but that's to be figured out another day. Again, we are getting the broad strokes here. We are just figuring out the big stuff. The fine-tuning, that comes later. And we can do that to this, and then I think I'm kind of inclined to curve it. Maybe I'll even continue the retaining wall from here. I just continue it all the way out to here. I could like that. I could. And then we'll move it a little bit closer. And then a bit further down. How does that look? Obviously, again, we got to figure out these bottom walls. But from the top wall perspective, I like that. Very industrial. Very, very industrial. But, geez, I do not know how I'm gonna transition that. Because this has the terrain overlaying, which kind of doesn't work in that same way. Let us go back to concrete and see if I can find a taller concrete wall, because that would work for at least this part of the bridge here. Without any sort of barrier would be the key. Walls. Let's just search concrete wall. EWM. Well, that's an interesting one, but not quite what I'm looking for. Almost. It's like, oh, actually, no. That's a good height. I'll work with that. The rust streaks are maybe not the best weathering, but this will work. Okay, we're going with this. For the time being. And obviously subject to change for the final version, but this gets us something that feels right. And at least gives us something to play with that's going to make it look a bit more complete. You know, I could probably combine this with that other one, and it'll actually... How does that look if we combine the two together? I mean, it's not a perfect fit, but just in terms of allowing us to extend that wall. I mean, it doesn't. I think I'm just going to have to kind of double layer that. But for over here, we can, you know, you have concretes of different ages and so forth. Maybe this had to be patched at some point, so we'll go with that for here, and then we're going to add a second piece, and we'll just extend that back to here. We'll adjust its height to go down beneath the other's terrain. And then I want this front piece to sort of hide the back piece. And then I'll raise the back piece up so that if you're looking, you won't see it. And there we have it. That, with the exception of that little bubble, that looks better. Is good enough for now. We've got 10 minutes to go, and I still have to do terrain. And I'm still going to do terrain. Because to me, like, yeah, there's a lot of other fun things to fine-tune, but the terrain's kind of the big outlier. Thank you for joining tonight, Derpy Blossom. And thank you all for joining. I hope that you've been enjoying tonight's stream of the Golf Sub and bringing this switching layout to life. Let's do some terrain painting. Because I think we don't really need the grid anymore. We get kind of the broad strokes of the thing. I think rock is going to be a good base of things. I like that terrain, but that's not going to... I don't know, maybe patches of this for something. It looks like something you'd see in the city, but like small patches of it. PBR, because we always work with PBR textures. And then, what am I thinking? I feel like just some rock, and then we'll kind of layer it from that. That's a nice asphalt texture, though. Yeah. Yeah, that could work for some places. But I'm looking for... not that. I want something more like this rock here, honestly. I mean, that's maybe a bit too big. Let's see if we scale it down, if that'll work. Start with it, and then I can always replace it if I'm not crazy about it. But we're going to use that as kind of our main base texture, and then we're going to layer stuff on top of that. Based on the specific areas. I like it because I'm so used to doing these layouts that have all of this green, all of this grass, and this is not that, and it shouldn't be that. There may be specific areas that you would have be more grassy, but a lot of this is going to be kind of dirt, rock, rubble. Yeah. Feels like the way to go overall. So we've got this dirt, rock, rubble kind of stuff. Let's do some lighter soils, maybe around here. around this freight station. This freight station also needs a platform, which it will get eventually. How do I want to handle these tanks? And I'll leave them for the time being, because I don't know. But I also don't feel I need to know at this exact moment. Okay, we're going with more of a brown dirt along the road here. We need to fix the elevation of the furniture factory. It is kind of sinking into the ground. So we'll raise it up so that it looks a little bit more normal. There we go. That's more of the stuff. That looks better. And we could, when fine detailing this, I might put more of the platform on a curve so that we can still use it and it doesn't look like it's just hanging there. Not Funny Productions. Hi. Well, hi, Not Funny. I'm glad that you could join us, even if it's not funny. Let's get... Oh, I don't need to do that. I was thinking I need to get the terrain level. It's like, nope, we'll just do the terrain track, which is going to be the terrain track, which is not to be confused with the train track. Delete that section, get this version, and also place that there. And now it goes all the way down. That looks good. Let's get the concrete wall finished off here. Get that sunk in. A lot of concrete retaining walls here to get it to have the right look, but I'm liking that. Let's keep mixing it up with the different types of dirt and gravel, and because I do want some variety. I do see some patches, like I think it'd be good to have some grass patches. Where was that forest that I really liked? Because I want to use that. Wherever that forest was, where I'm like, oh, that's a good bit of forest. Let's search PBR forest. I should have painted that elsewhere and then said, hey, I could just grab that and go. No. I mean, I like this one. Maybe we'll use this. Actually, I think I'll use this around the track as kind of a transition because it matches the color of the ballast pretty well. So we'll use it as sort of a transition color between the two. And we'll just, for the sake of time, we'll use a more conventional grass texture for providing little bits of green. Scrapyard's gonna get... Man, there's really not a lot of room for that scrapyard. But I don't think there needs to be. I think just a few well-placed objects and some fences, and that kind of sells it. Let's get some more PBR dirt around here, using yet another kind because yay for variety. Well, I like this ground rubble for kind of the side stuff. That's a bit too green. And that's maybe a bit too tree-like. But I like this as a... And that's the thing, is that even if you're saying, hey, I'm not using much grass, I really just want to stick with soil, there's so many... Whether you're doing it in the sim or you're modeling, you have so many different options to choose from as far as different types of soil. Good to vary it up. Because then it's not just one shade of brown or one shade of black. Then you've got kind of this variety. So even where it's not a lot of color, but again, I'm going to add a little bit of color to... I don't even know what that is, but I like it. I mean, it's not the most attractive color, but it's some kind of color. It provides some kind of range. I think here we could get away with the most grass because maybe there's some sort of field or something like that on this side where the end of the world is. It's the end of the world as we know it, or the end of the layout as we know it. And almost the end of building, but stick around because we're gonna have the playtime. We're gonna get to do some switching here, and we're gonna get to have that kind of fun. Let's get the music back on. because we like the music. So, yeah. In fact, we're at 9 o'clock as it is. I feel inclined to add a couple of haze bumpers, but outside of that, I feel like we've kind of got the big stuff in place. The only thing I'm going to do, I never did adjust this, so I'm going to adjust this track a bit, just to give, because later once we go in here, it gives us a little bit of room behind the station. I mean, already it's tight because we barely have any room for a platform. Well, we'll make it work. I feel comfortable about that. So, anything else that I think I need before we get to playing? Yeah, I need to get those switch stands out of the way. Obviously, long run will replace them, but they're fine for right now. But just so I'm not driving through them. I kind of want to fix that. All right. Last thing we'll do is we'll double up on the concrete wall. And we'll get that done. Just so that then I'm not staring at that. Because that feels like it's this central scene. And I'm going to be looking at it. And it's going to keep bothering me. So let us just get that rectified. And how we're going to do that, we're going to double up. And kind of try to get it to be a bit lower, a wee bit lower, basically just low enough that it's covering where the other one ends. We'll get the height for that, which is that, and then applying it to the right wall, and then we'll continue to add other bits. We're gonna make sure that part's straight. Nope. I keep straightening the road. And now I can't. The challenge of straightening these retaining walls, because the retaining walls kind of... I seem to... There we go. Okay, now I need to figure out how to get the bottom one straightened. Well, that's not what I wanted to do anyway. We'll get that and press B and hope that it figures out which one I'm trying to straighten. There we go. And now we can move that back into place and just run it along here, I would say. That's much better. Now I just need to height adjust for that retaining wall. And get that one fixed up. And we'll apply the height here. And then I think we might need to straighten one more section. I'm not quite sure on that front. Matching the curve is going to be the interesting challenge on this one. And then I think if I straighten this, then we'll get it to fit properly. Oh, so close. There we are. And then we'll do another curve and another curve. Apply the height to those two. And then just try to get them to match. While getting this one to go underneath here. And then this one can go here. And here. I mean, this will need more refinement, but can I at least stare at that and not feel like it's a mess? Well, not while part of it is underground. I'm not sure why that... Oh, there must be another spline point here that I don't have. For reasons I can't figure out. So let's figure out where that spline point is, so I know how to... Yeah, there's a spline point here that hasn't been height adjusted, and so I am going to try to find it. There we go. Somehow I found it. And let us just try to kind of sort of rough it. Because this is going to need way more refinement than what I can afford to give it at this point. Oh. Oh, so very close. So there's this bit, there's this bit. It's hard to make that not stand out as much as it is, but it's like, oh, here's the hidden one. So many spline points, so little time. Okay, not perfect, but at least I can stare at it and it won't totally bug me for the remaining hour. So, there we go. Now it's playtime. So, we've got a wide range of industries to play with here. So let's figure out what we want to do. Well, first, time to thank tonight's sponsor again, Jointed Rail. And here's what we're going to be playing with as far as our motive power is concerned. We've got these, and this is such a perfect fit because this is the Gulf sub, this is Gulf Coast Leasing, and they didn't make these for this project. They already had these on the shelf, so to speak. But when I saw they had them, I'm like, hey, this would be totally perfect fit. Partially because Shawn mentioned that he wants to be able to switch this layout with SD40-2s. And what do we have? We have SD40-2s. In fact, not only do we have a regular SD40-2, we have an SD40-2B unit. Eh? Now, is that cool or what? So, we've got these Gulf Coast. And so, in my history of this layout, and I'm pretending that it's... So Shawn will be modeling sort of what if Milwaukee Road. And I'm kind of modeling it as if it's a leasing company that's starting to get into actually operating railroads. Hence why you have Gulf Coast Leasing as the railroad. But it's not, or as the motive power, but they're still figuring out their corporate identity. So that's kind of the fun that I'm playing with here. So that's going to be the motive power. Now we want to have some switches. So let's look up, what do I have already in terms of reefers? I've got that. That works. So this is a refrigerated warehouse, so we'll have a refrigerated car for it. Let's have a look at our gondolas, because this is a scrap yard, so let's say this is an empty scrap gon. I don't know what HBNS is, but we'll do that thing. So we've got our empty scrap gon, we've got our reefer car. I feel like we'll be able to switch like half the industries. So I want to get a little bit of everything in here. So we're going to treat it like... And part of the fun is I also want to see how it works to switch with both of the units. Obviously, the requirement was switch it with one, but we're going to go with both. The only area where I feel like that's going to be tight is around here. But even there, I don't think it really limits you. So that's good to have that flexibility. We've got our furniture store. So let's have an R box that's going to come in to the furniture store. And we're going to come into the world this way. So that R box is going to the furniture store. We've got the paint. So that's going to be... Let's see what I've got in terms of UTLX tankers. I don't know if Terra would be... Yeah, that'll work for me. So we've got a tank car there, although let's actually make that a car to... No, I want to keep it varied. One car to spot, one car to lift. We're going to bring in a car for cereal. So let's see what I've got in front in terms of ACFX center flows. Oh, I've got that. So I don't think that would be a... No, we'll use this BNSF car. So the BNSF car is going to the cereal mill, and it's going to be pulling off a box. Let's make it a CSX box. Coming off of the general cereal mill. Let's spot a car down there. We'll make that the ACF car. What else do I want to have going on here? I think that's pretty good. So that's everything. The only thing I don't have, I don't have something for there. Let's see what kind of flats I have. What would be running modern flat? Let's just do another boxcar. Let's have a look at our Norfolk Southern boxcars. Place something down. NS. I'd be sad if I went NS box. Let's just look for other 50 foots. Works for me. Okay, there's a boxcar to lift. And the aggregates. I'm gonna get my rail driver hooked up because boy will this be nutty to switch if I don't have my rail driver handy. TOFC. Yeah, sure, why not? We'll put a TOFC. I'm pretty sure I've got some TOFC stuff. I think. Or TTX. Let's see what we've got. I've got center beams. I've got a bulkhead flat. Flat car for trailers. This is probably a bit short, but doesn't matter. Gives us some variety. So, yep. TOFC, empty TOFC flat car being picked up. Okay, so that gives us, and then aggregate hopper, let's lift something else. Okay, so we've got something else to lift from the aggregate. Oh, well, that's not high enough. All right, let's rectify that. And also, let's save, because I'm realizing we haven't saved, and saving might be a good idea. Always save your work. That is true with just about anything. Okay, so at this point, we've got everything being worked at least once. Can I do it in 45 minutes? We'll find out. So the way we're modeling this today is like we've got this power. It has to go out to the interchange, and let's say the interchange is nearby, hence why they're not doing the work going out to the interchange and then coming back. A lot of different ways to run this, but we're going to run it just going light power to the interchange, grabbing the cars, working them, and heading out. Maybe we'll head out this way just to provide a little bit of variety. Okay, here we go. And if you can't hear me, please do let me know, and I will adjust the sound. It's sounding a bit loud right now, so I'm going to turn down the sound coming from the train simulator just a wee bit. Okay. And maybe we'll pause on the music now, since we have another source of sonic entertainment other than my voice, as it were. And rail driver's working, which is awesome. So, these are jointed rails, Gulf Coast leasing units. They are super nice. So I appreciate JR for sending these for inclusion in tonight's stream. So we're gonna head out. We're gonna turn the headlights on, and we're gonna go to the interchange and get our cars. Also making sure our switches are set correctly, because there's two things that you guys know I'm prone to do. One is overrun track, and two is forget to change my switches. Those are some neat MDs. I think so. I love this B unit. I think this B unit is just so cool. Like, it's just something different. It may be fictional, but it feels like something you could actually see. So we're going to get... Oh, the only place I'm realizing it could be kind of a pain with the B unit... Oh, hold up. I've got traffic rolling on the bridge. We're going to fix that. We're going to go to edit... or not edit session. We're going to go to edit environment, and we're going to turn off that traffic, because it'll also be running on the streets, and we don't want that. Okay. So yeah, going to be a little bit of a pain, but I think we could actually fit the, we could fit the ag hopper, in with the 2 units. And I don't think we're dropping off anything. Oh no, we are dropping off a hopper there, but that'll be okay. So, picking up our cars from interchange. Now we're going to bring them into the scene. I'm just going to bring them on the run around here. Good way of checking that track anyway. Notice how the lights change with the direction. I think that's a nice touch, scripting-wise. Actually, now it sounds like we could probably afford to make the volume a little louder on the choo-choo, so we'll do that. So here we're coming in. We got 3 cars from our interchange, and we're going to be taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back with us. So good amount of work today. So how do we want to do this? Man, oh man. This is the part of the show that's always like, okay, I got to split talking with you with also figuring out what the heck I want to do. So... And we don't have a lot of room to kind of just stick cars here, so it's kind of a matter of balancing how many are interchange and how many are out. This BNS off hopper, we said, is going to there. So it's actually the exact right spot. So I think the BNSF hopper will just run down there. The R box, and then we can pick up those 2 cars. Then we can start to work. So the R box is going to the furniture factory, and we're lifting the tank. We'll need to run around for that. This hopper is going to... Where did I say that hopper's going to? Oh, I said that hopper's getting dropped off at the cereal cereal plant. So that's also going to need to be run around. So yeah, we'll start with... We'll start with dropping off the BNSF hopper then. Get inside for the cab for a little bit. I think this is going to be a good view when we're street running, so we'll switch back to this then, because right now we mainly just have a view of the blue. Obviously not something we could do in model railroading, but boy, is it sure cool to do it here. This is also... And now we can start to also look at scenes. So just having these engines going by this old station, that's a classy scene. That's very nice. There are a lot of photo possibilities around here, especially once we get into the super detailing of what we have going on here. A lot of fun we can have with that. I'm realizing I want to change the switch radius, or radius, but... yeah, let's do that while we're at it. So by default, Train Z kind of sets the radius of the switches to be kind of tight. And we're going to set it to 0 so that as soon as we've cleared the switch, we're good to change that switch. And that just makes our lives easier as far as switching. So we don't have to clear it by more distance than necessary. So I think that's all the switches. I'm sure if I've forgotten one, it will remind me when I'm trying to throw the switch and it's like, oh, this switch is locked. You can't move there even though you should be able to. So. The prototype is BN for the B unit, so they do exist. Oh, I stand corrected. Well, I guess I just haven't spent enough time. I mean, I'm an East Coast guy, so I'll admit Burlington Northern is something that I find myself knowing less about in general. Um, I'm always happy to learn, though. That's part of the reason I love model railroading, especially this, is that it gives me an excuse to go down these different rabbit holes as far as what different railroads exist and different types of operation, and that's a lot of fun. Radius wise, I think that it's safe to say these are your tight curves here, and they're not that tight. You'll be fine as far as if you want to run 6-axle power on a layout like this, or if you wanted to run steam air and you were doing consolidations. There's not a lot of tight turns. Definitely a lot of flexibility on that front. And here we go, our first street running, or our first time on the street running portion, and that looks so nice. This is undoubtedly the scene. Like, you had to encapsulate this layout in one scene. This is it. In fact, I think the book has an illustration of what this scene would look like, and it does look like this. It looks pretty similar to this. Oop, I spotted the car too far. We'll pull that sucker back up. But I think that is just... that's cool. And let's look at what we're doing so we don't... oh, perfect. We got it right this time. So that car is taken care of. But that just... I mean, it's different. Because so often in layouts over under, especially for a layout this small, the over and under would probably be, you know, some just little strip of track where you could stage a train, but you can't actually run a train. And here we are, we could actually run this train underneath. I think that's cool. And actually, we have more headroom than I thought, so you could probably get away with putting a girder on the front of it if you wanted to do that. Or decrease the height by a ½ inch, and then you could reduce the grades. Different ways of handling that. Oh, and this is what the street running looks like from the cab. Not a view you would get in actual model railroading, but boy, does that look cool. Like, that is super nifty. And even in terms of the photo you could get, like, this is still... like, that is a nice scene right there. Needs some super detailing, but it's fun. That is going to be fun. So I want to put these freight cars on the back end so that I can just run them up to the siding, and then we're set on that front. And then that'll give me head end room so I can use the scrap dealer to do the switcheroony with the tank car. And I think that's going to be it as far as the cars that I have working on the west end, because then everything else is worked from the other side. So it's a switching puzzle, but compared to the Conrail P&L secondary, where my brain was going to hurt switching that, especially that first night, this I can wrap my head around a little bit more. I may not be doing this the most efficiently, but I'm confident I'm doing a better job with this than I was with the P&L secondary, as far as making sure that it all makes sense. Oh, what now? Jeez. I did not derail, you derailed. Okay, why does it think I derailed? Oh, because I had a switch set the wrong way. Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh. No, that switch wasn't set the wrong way. It was nothing. You saw nothing. Okay, back into the game. Oh, I gotta replace the engines or they'll sound like nothing. Okay, delete, and then place the B unit, and then the A unit, and then rotate this. Okay, here we go. You saw nothing. Back to the task at hand. Once we click on the engine to prove that we're operating a specific train, and we're going to take it back. But this is and you think about things, details like traffic lights, um, fences. Oh, there's a lot to be done with this. There's a like this is gonna lighten up so much, and I love this scene. This is a really cool scene. I feel like this is going to be a recurring theme on the show of like, oh, this track plan will be fun, and then, oh, this is really cool. Um, but I do think there's so much that's given with the different elevations because it makes it feel much bigger than it is. Now, the sacrifice is having those grades, but let's see if that ends up being an issue. I mean, the big question is it necessary to spot cars on this big heavy grade here, or can you get away with a 5% grade? I think there is compromise no matter, like, when you look at this here, we've already had to start the grade here, and I think it's safe to say you're going to be placing cars there. So there, it might require some thought, but in terms of like, is it a detriment to have a steep grade here? I think the answer is no. I think that as long as you're smart about your switching moves, or if you need to place a car there, you use some wooden blocks or something, then you'll be in good shape. Love the sounds on these too. That is a nice 645. Realizing this hopper's probably of the wrong era with its friction bearings, but not this railroad's problem. They're getting it off, they're getting it out. We've got our we've got our pickup for the refrigerated car, the reefer. Now we're pulling out. It definitely seems like this is a plan where you'd want some head-end room, because if you don't give yourself head-end room, you are going to have a lot of back and forth. So even if we ignore the fact that we've got this second unit here, you'd have room for maybe 2 cars, which, well, maybe that isn't the end of the world, truth be told. Because here we are, well, we're pulling 4 cars, so actually, yeah, it is the end of the world. Maybe you'd want that challenge, but that is definitely food for thought as far as what kind of head-end room you need to come in and out of that whole section. You could make it work with an engine 2 cars, but you might be doing some back and forth as a result. So we're going to stick these cars... let's see. I think we'll put them on the run around here because that's a good way of keeping them out of the way. And then we're going to need to run around. This is going to get it, which we have plenty of room to do because we have this switch here, but we also have the switch back there. So that will not prove to be an issue. Goody. And make sure our switches are set correctly, and now we'll head back. But yeah, I think this is I mean, how it would function in the real world when you have to deal with actually building the grades and so forth. Not the easiest build. I think that this would have its challenges when it comes to construction. But do I think you can make it work? Yeah. I despite that crazy heavy grade, I think it could work. I think it actually is really cool. Gives you a lot of switching, and it really fits the theme. Like this, having these cars, having this sort of industrial park theme or industrial sector. Like, I love this. I love having the grain elevator here, the aggregate loader. Like, it balances nicely in terms of the different elevations of building and so forth. So now we are going to run around our train, and that's going to allow us to switch out we're swapping cars at this general cereal mill. And the boxcar, and then we're swapping cars down the branch. I think we'll swap cars at the cereal mill first because that car's at the end. And once we get that out of the way, then we can just put the boxcar on the end, and then go back down to the street running. Well, looks like I've got a spam bot to take care of. Yeah, let me just get those out of the way. Sorry, guys. Part I want to look at is blocked by my camera. Okay. And we return to your regularly scheduled running. And now we will make sure all of our switches are aligned, which they are, and we'll do our runaround. We'll follow along with the train for this one. So what do you guys think of this plan? So question for you would be, if you were making this track plan, what era would you be doing? Would you want to be switching? Would you want to be doing Steam, 060s? Would you want to be doing a transition era, maybe some SW1s? Or do you like doing it modern? If this was your layout, what would you be doing era-wise? Curious to hear your thoughts on this. Although that's also kind of cool to see as we're running through with the CSX box and so forth. But yeah, this bridge is... Yeah, it's a centerpiece. I'm definitely going to have to play around with the scenery elements because it does look a bit clunky at the moment with the sides. Nick's getting a bunch of casino ads because of how hard he's gambling with the switching maneuvers. I hope I'm not making that much of a gamble tonight. I feel like I'm doing better than that tonight. Oh, I guess I forgot about picking up that from the blue hoppers on the other side. But we can make that our very last move, so I'm not really worried about that. That's an easy one to take care of. Ooh, started to go the wrong way. I want to lift the boxcar first, and then we'll pull the whole set and put the hopper in there. Except then if I do that, then I won't be able to have the boxcar handy for the shove. So how do I want to make the boxcar handy for the shove? I want to make it handy by... Oh, simple. I'll put the CSX car, I'll go next to the reefer, and then, yeah, that'll work. I knew what I was doing all along. I totally knew that's what I was doing all along. What Sean and I were talking about, he will be running his Wisconsin Central on the real model he is doing, and I will try to recreate his shots on the sim. Wisconsin Central would fit this well. I could definitely see it with some nice Jeep 30s. RWS Baden, do Penn Central 1970s, GP38s, SW1500s, Jeep 9s. Yep, those I could see doing that with a fit. And you know, we've done this as more of an industrial thing, but we could kind of do this like we did the P&L secondary, where there's trees and it's not as industrial park, but it's more like urban decay. Could definitely do urban decay with this. Bistino Southern Railroad looks like a wonderful micro layout. Wonderful layout. I don't know if it technically qualifies as a micro. Everybody seems to have a different definition of micro. I've heard 4 square feet. I've heard 8 square feet. This is technically 20 square feet, so I think by most definitions it's not technically a micro. But certainly a small shelf layout. And yeah, I do think it's a good it's a solid design. I really, in running it, there's not much I'd fault it for. I mean, the grades are tricky, and again, in real world where you have to worry about like these cars are sitting on that grade and you can see that grade visually, you need to have something to physically jam it. Like that's maybe one of the shortcomings, but I think you learn to work with it. You just, and maybe that's part of the fun of it for you, is like that's your way of setting handbrakes, is you have to put a physical object to jam it in there, something like that. Okay, now we're gonna pull ahead for the sake of dropping off that covered hopper. We're doing great. Man, today has gone nice and smoothly. And I'm saying that, and then I'll derail the train again. But I'm saying that because it's like, hey, I chose a good amount of switching. That's actually a good amount of switching, and not driving myself crazy. So yes, Sean, once you end up building this layout, clearly I'll need to make my way out to your neck of the woods and see how it actually looks in the real world, because I think this is going to be a fun one. I think this is going to give you a lot of replay value. Especially, and I said, oh, and if I derail a train, it's like, yeah, I derailed the train because I ran out of head end room, because of course I did. Okay, I'm gonna cheat and just give myself more head end room, because I do not feel like giving myself inordinate challenges today. Oh, and I can't extend it because I gotta re-rail the cars. Oh, nope. I want to re-rail. Nope. Re-rail. And then I have to move them off the block so that they are not... that I can adjust the height. And then I can put it back in. I Christopher Columbus the train off the world. I guess I kind of did. But... I'm just choosing to say that tonight I have all the head end room I want. Your mileage may vary, but I think part of the replay value with this is the fact that you could do, obviously the heavy emphasis is switching, but you could model it so that you've got run through power, because if you had staging on both sides rather than just one, you could vary where the turns are coming from. So maybe sometimes your turns are coming from the east and sometimes they're coming from the west. Also, oh, that's right, I have to lift that, right. You can vary the direction, but also if you had like these fiddle yards with enough track, you can have run through freights, you could have Amtrak, and maybe that's part of the challenge of it, is like, okay, so here's your train. Oh, I just realized I put that on backwards, the 2 units. Oh well, good enough. But maybe you have to clear the main line so that Amtrak can get through, or certain trains have to get through at certain times. That's a nice way of providing challenge and variety to the operations. It's sort of what I'm calling a British element, because I've been spending a lot of time reading back issues of Railway Modeler, which is a UK publication. And it's interesting to see the differences in modeling philosophies. And I'm putting that car there, realizing I may have skunked myself for head end room when it comes to that blue hopper. I'll figure that out later. But a lot of the British layouts that I see are ones that basically just have one scene and then a fiddle yard or multiple fiddle yards for the sake of getting equipment in and out of the scene. And especially British layout, there's a lot of scheduled trains. Like a lot of the operations with British layouts are the idea of having a timetable with a whole swath of trains coming in and going out. Not all at once, but more like this train comes in and then it goes out, and then this train comes in and goes out. And this layout kind of fits with that philosophy of it could work as a self-contained thing. Hi, Alco. You don't see him there. I'll show him to you in a moment. it could work that way, but it can also work. It could work as a self-contained thing, but it could also work where you model run through power. It could work as having this as part of a larger layout. That's definitely one way to take this. Alco, buddy. I'm gonna say hello to the folks at home. Here's Alco making his cameo appearance for the night. Hey, hi, Alco. Good kitty boy. All right. So now that I'm realizing I kind of skunked myself with that hopper, what do I want to do with that hopper? Maybe we could fit 3 cars. Plus the other one. If not, we'll just set that hopper off to the side, and I'll just live to regret the lack of efficiency in my train movement. Yeah, Sean, probably more lead track. It really depends on... maybe you want to challenge yourself by not giving yourself a super crazy amount of lead track. Sometimes that's the fun of the challenge of it. Again, your mileage may vary. I'm not... Certain challenges with regards to lead tracks I think are okay. Other ones I feel like if it's too artificial, like there would be more main line. Like here, I can't believe this would be the end of the line. Like it just feels like, no, you should have more room there. So you want to give yourself the room that you need to pull that off. Oh yeah, we're not gonna have room for that, so we'll have to move this hopper back to the main and then grab the blue hopper. Except I'm realizing that I need that box cart free first. Okay. Well, there goes my momentum. There goes my... Oh, this is so easy and simple, but... Yeah, we'll get there. We're not too far off, though. At least the flat car will be an easy lift, because that isn't contingent on anything. In fact, I might grab that now, because... does it matter if I grab that now? Yeah, I suppose I might as well grab that now. And we'll get that switch cleared, so that way I can then move this back in. Tall Paul, the switch levers look cartoonish. They are. They're the default switch levers. When I go back in to refine this, we'll put proper ground throws in. And that's another thing with this layout design. You could do switch machines. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing switch machines. But truth be told, you probably could have gotten away with just doing ground throws. Actually, if I put that on the main, then that won't be an issue. Yeah, we'll just put that car on the main. Oh, jeez. These stupid casino ads. Well, I guess you know you're popular when you have random casino ads appearing on your videos. But I suppose it is a gamble what the switch is going to look like. So we're going to grab that hopper. That's going to be the very rearmost car of the train. We're just going to leave it out on the main here. And then this car could go back in. Then we could grab the Topsy flat car, put it on. The cutter cars, push the railway box out so that it's set to go for the switch with the tank car, and that'll be it. So I have to say, I really like this as a logo. This the waves of this Gulf Coast leasing thing. I think that makes for a good logo. And I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight and watching the stream. And if you enjoy this and want to help support the show, again, patreon.com/the roundhouse. I appreciate all the support you're able to lend. Goes a long way to help expand what we can do with this show as well with the Roundhouse podcast. And even if you're not able to support financially, if you just think this is cool and want to share this to model railroading groups or whatever you see fit, that means a lot as well. Okay, now we're pulling this car. We can get that out, tucked out of the way. And yeah, nice little switching puzzle. I would say this is a medium puzzle. Like, this doesn't feel ridiculously complicated. And admittedly, I'm making it a little bit more. So if I was using just one unit, I could have made that move without with the hopper still in place. But yeah, nothing like having a little bit of challenge to keep things fun and interesting in there. Right, Alco? Oh, no, not this again. And I've cleared that switch, so... Hey, I didn't derail that time. That's awesome. Except now I'm not clear of the switch. Clearly that one didn't get the memo about the trigger radii, so we'll go in and adjust that one manually to 0. Although somehow it still doesn't think I can throw that switch. Interesting. Can I force it to throw in this surveyor? That is weird, because I am clearly not blocking that switch. So I am going to momentarily cheat and just move the train this way, because that switch should have been able to be thrown. So I do not feel even remotely guilty about that cheat. Or that 5-fingered crane move, for lack of a better word. Okay. So we need enough room to be able to get us and the flat car in there. So I'm going to push this a little further back, just to make sure we've got room for 2 units plus a flat car. I did not derail that time, Rudy. So no cups required. None required whatsoever. And now we're going to throw that grain hopper back over to cereal, and then we'll grab the flat car. But I think this lends itself really well to this era. I mean, I do think it's a track plan that you could probably make work for about any era. I don't think it's 2-era specific. But it's nice with the 6-axle power. And again, if you could easily... Because the main line doesn't have a lot of demands as far as the radii are concerned, you could have long SG70s and whatnot running through without issue. I demolished the car stops. What car stops? There is no car stops. That is blank and empty. No car stops, no calls to customer. I stand by my ground on that one. And this bridge definitely does become a centerpiece with regards to switching, because you're either on it, working cars, you're under it, working that grain elevator, or you're on top of, you're behind it, working the warehouse and the scrap dealer. So yeah, the bridge is a big deal. And we've got the switch set right, so we can put that where it needs to go. Again, here we are driving, I should say, switching cars on the Gulf sub, which was a track plan commissioned by Shawn of Sean's Trains here on YouTube. You can check out his channel. And thank you, Sean, for reaching out to me and commissioning this project. I think that this is a really cool one to be able to explore on the show and watch the scenery of it evolve. And if you have a track plan, train layout, oh, quick side note, this is a really cool scene here. I'm going to take a screenshot even though it's not quite done, because that is a cool angle. How that building could go, like, that could be a really cool photo for the real one. But if you have a track plan that you'd like to layout you'd want to see pre-visualized, like we do here on Great Train Layouts live every month, Thursday at 7:30, usually the third Thursday of the month, but I was out of town last week, so hence why it's the fourth Thursday. Please do feel free to reach out to me. Contact info is in the description of this video, or you can search Great Train Layouts on Facebook and message me through there. Time to get this Topsy hopper collected. Back to the freight station. Can I send you the screenshot? Sure. Poke me through Facebook if I don't send it to you after tonight. And obviously, you know, as part, if you commission a project, we talk it in detail. You tell me what you're looking for, how much work you want me to do. Like, do you want me to make it a fully playable thing? Or if you're building a bigger layout, maybe your budget only allows for just doing track and some basic buildings and no ground textures or detail. We can accommodate your needs. But I'm also happy to send screenshots. So if you want me to pre-visualize a layout and you don't have the train simulator, then I'd be happy to just send screenshots and make it beneficial to you that way as well. There's definitely benefit to owning the sim, Trains with a Z Railroad Simulator 19, because it does allow you to play with it. But that said, there's value in just being able to see it as a 3D mock-up, essentially. All right, we've got that Topsy flat car. Just about where it needs to be. We'll get it hooked onto the CSX boxcar. Then once that's done, we'll shove this boxcar out past the station, so that when we run around these cars, we can collect it, do a switch with the tank car, and then we will be good to go. We'll get the switch thrown and get things set back there. And definitely there's a lot you could do with the backdrop as well. I mean, I'm working on creating more custom backdrops. There's not a lot of city backdrops for Train Z. If I had some city photos that I could stitch together for a city backdrop, I might work on that as a thing. But because it does look a bit empty as is, but I mainly have landscape shots at this point. But I'm kind of building up my library of backdrops, not just for the sim, but also because one of the things I'd like to be able to offer folks as part of the layout design process is I have a printer near where I live who's capable of doing large format prints. So I want to be able to work with you, and you know, if you have specific backdrop needs in mind, to be able to work with you to actually get a print of your backdrop made and sent to you to be able to help you build your layout. Yeah, man, this is actually kind of a nice secondary surprise, or you could say, that how this grain elevator really adds a nice framing piece to the bridge scene. that ended up being a nice kind of surprise. And that's the benefit, is like, even where certain things, it's like, I know how this is going to play out, but then when you start really spending time with it in the sim and playing with it, you realize, oh, this makes for a nice photo opportunity, and this is a good way of good perspective of looking at what's going on activity wise with the train and so forth. So all right, last up, we're gonna do the switcheroo of the boxcar going to the furniture factory and picking up the tank car from the paint plant. Alco, your tail is in the way. Thank you. And let's go pick up that boxcar. I think one of the things that makes this an easier track plan, to as far as the switching is concerned, is the fact that you have this nice long run and went around. Like, I don't think, unless you gave yourself a huge challenge, like if you had to swap every single car on this thing, like you came in with a train of 6 cars and you're having to swap with 6 cars on here, that might be a way to challenge yourself. But you've got a good amount of room to work with this run around, so you're not going to be having to do tons of extra runarounds. And even there, if you needed more room, you could probably tuck it in the, like, you could tuck a couple of cars in the fuel track to do your extra work. So it scales difficulty-wise. So you could make this really difficult to switch, but inherently it's not too hard. Oh, and I forgot to throw the switch, so I'm going to fast forward that so that I'm not taking up too much time in there. And there's me forgetting to throw the switches. If there's 2 things you could count on, derailing at ends of track and forgetting to throw switches. And here we go to, and now we get to go down the street running again, which I think that is so cool. I really like how that looks as a scene. And this is very much something that you could photograph with a cell phone. I mean, you need a cell phone and a small enough tripod, but you could get a camera in here to actually be able to photograph this or film it and be able to appreciate it for what it is. Ooh, that's a bit speedy down that grade. That's the other thing, too, that I'm thinking about as I'm looking at this. Couplers in this game are pretty much unbreakable, but you would want to make sure that your grade transitions allow for actually fitting them in. The grade transitions don't mean your cars uncouple. Sorry, I got distracted by more of those stupid casino ads. Oh, I need to stop because I'm in the wrong program. Oh no, not again. Okay. But that doesn't count because I was dealing with a spammer, so. And get the boxcar back up, and let's get that. And then delete those, put that back on. SB, and then now I gotta delete those messages. Okay, and done. And back to the switching. Back to the good part. So I'm realizing I've only got room for 3 cars. So actually, this all of a sudden became more difficult than I thought. Maybe I could squeeze a 4th car in there. I'm going to have to somehow because I have to be able to get those 2 cars back forth. That, or I have to run all the way up and drop off the 1 car. That is daunting. Let's just hope we can make it work. I mean, I suppose as a... No, that wouldn't work either. But again, I am technically making this harder for myself by way of having 2 units down here. If I was only having the 1, that would not be a problem. And actually, truth be told, if I don't have enough room, what I can do is I could just put the B unit on the hill, use the A unit to do my switch, and then run with the car in the middle. That might be the way I do it. That could be fun. Maybe we'll do it that way. This is also a cool way to see the world from this angle here. Yeah, John Overman, I think this is a really nice B unit. Jointed Rail did a nice job on it. Very twisty windy. I think you might, you know, as you're thinking of actually, like, if you're plotting it in any rail or some track lane software, you might want to consider how you, what types of switches you use and how you lay it, so maybe it isn't quite as twisty windy. Maybe like that. I don't know. Oh, yay! I cleared it. Awesome. I like it when these things play in my favor. Okay, so we cleared that switch, and now we can put the tank car. Okay, which answers the question of, do you end up putting cars on the hill? Yes, if you're switching here. That said, if you don't want to be stuck putting on the hill, you could always just shove it back to the station and then put it back on the hill. That'd be one way to do it. And now I'm also realizing that if I'd moved this consist a little bit over that way, I'd have room to run around my tank car here. But as it stands, I don't. That becomes interesting. I can make that work. And now pulling forward again. Get that box car spotted. We'll put the tank car by the station. Then we can shove those cars into it. And then grab the blue car. Put it at the head end. And we'll be set to head out of town. So, yeah, definitely a lot of kind of interesting angles at which you can appreciate the layout. Not sure what I'll do for scenery assets wise to make that not an issue. I might just put a girder below it so that you can't really tell that that's a problem. And let's see what that looks like. And there we go. Boxcar spotted. Yeah, definitely a lot of fun to be had with detailing around a place like this. And a layout like this, the advantage of working with just 20 square feet is it's not... On the one hand, you don't have a lot of scenery to have to fill out. Especially if you do industries, a lot of that scenery, you don't have to do a bunch of trees. You could just do a bunch of buildings and there you go. The only thing to keep in mind is that because you're switching, you're going to be looking at this thing a lot, and you'll be looking at the same areas over and over. So I think it makes it really critical that the scenery that you have is solid enough that you won't get bored of looking at it over and over. That you really make sure your scene's immersive, because every inch of this you're going to be staring at for moving one car into one place or for one reason or another. Hello, Luca. Now my other cat joins me. I think he's saying, I'm hungry, feed me. And he will be fed after we get this train out of town. Do I feel like moving those cars just so I can use this shorter run around? Yes, I do. So that is what I'm going to do. We are moving the cars using the five-fingered crane, but it's close enough to the end of the stream. I feel okay doing that. I can live with myself tonight for that. Okay. So, now we can move... We can use the short run around for the tank car. Grab the hopper, grab the tank car, put them on the train, and we are good to go. So while we're kind of finishing up here, what did you guys think of this episode? What did you think of this layout build? Is it something you want to see? Like, so that in the long run, there will probably be some sort of what makes this layout great episode about it, but that's still probably several months off. I'm kind of torn if I want to stream it again. I mean, it's a cool layout, but I feel like at this point we're just talking about like traffic lights and stuff like that. So I'm probably going to move on to the next layout. But hopefully this is one that you've enjoyed watching tonight and you've learned some things that you feel like you could apply to your own model railroading in one form or another. And before we get hooked to that car, my OCD's kicking in, and I want the... We're going to go back to the way it originally was, and we're going to have the low hood lead. So, or the... I'd call it chop nose. I guess we'll call it chop nose, yeah. Chop nose lead. And hey, how about that? We've got the blue next to the blue, so that'll make for a good photo. J-Train enjoyed it very much. He had another amazing layout made by very nice layout. Potato Head. Very neat track plan. I enjoyed watching you bring it to life. Well, thanks, guys. I'm glad that this has been another entertaining build. I always try to find something new and creative, and I feel particularly fortunate when other people are coming to me saying, here's the exciting creative thing that you should be building. And this is definite. I mean, this is another one where it's like, I don't think I could bring myself to actually build this in real life. It's a neat track plan. I just don't know if I like my transition era. I like my Steam too much. I don't think I could, like, stay focused to this long enough. But that's why I do the sim stuff, is because it sort of helps me to scratch the itch when I'm feeling the need to do something different. But then I haven't plunked down tons of money on rolling stock only to go, oh, maybe I didn't want to do that after all. Although I would say, as an N-scale build, you know, N-scale, this would be 1 by 5 feet. And that feels surprisingly manageable, both space-wise and whatnot. I don't know if N-scale on those grades would be great. But even if you made it like 1 by 8 in N-scale, that could be quite nice. Sean, I've taken a bunch of notes about what I need to reconsider when building the module. Thank you. It's been fun, and I hope you had fun too. Oh, I've definitely had fun. I've definitely had fun, Sean. Thanks for this one. Yeah, I would say, could you build it as... So, with this 3rd Street Industrial, could you build it as designed? Yes, but it is going to have some interesting quirks to it. I think if you have the room to expand by a few feet, ease the grades. Because to my way of thinking, ideally, this entire front main line would be level. No grade here. I think this would be level from here to here. And then you're having a 4, maybe even getting away with a 3% from the diamond down to the bridge. Something like that might be better. But I think it partially depends on what you're willing to live with as far as trade-offs. Yes, that was a hard couple, but it was mainly the sound effect. It's mainly what you're willing to live with as far as trade-offs, as far as placing cars on the grade for switching. But as we saw, it comes up a bit, but not as much as you'd think. And truth is, it only comes up when you're switching that industry. And you could just make an operating rule, because railroads have operating rules specific to what the infrastructure is. So you could make an operating rule that says that the crew who's switching out this industry cannot park cars on the hill, and they have to bring them up to the station before they go back down. And that could be kind of a way of making things interesting. So I think as a final send-off, what I'm going to do, we've got our train reattached, but before we send it out, we're going to shove it to the end, and we're going to run the whole way through. I think that's what we're going to do to kind of have a final send-off to this scene, is just watch a train going through and have fun. And there come the casino ads again. Yay, YouTube. Good, Superbird, good stuff. I have a friend I'm trying to convince to build something small and may share this track plan for inspiration for him. Yeah, I mean, this would be, again, I as a build, I see challenges. It's not as easy as just making something flat. But as a 1x5, I mean, that's not that big. That is a very reasonable amount of space. So I think that, if your friend's up for the challenge of trying to figure out the grades, what's practical in terms of construction, they're in for a good layout. This has a lot of replay value, especially if you give yourself some nice big cassettes off of either end. So if you were doing an end scale, let's say, so this is 5 feet, so let's say you gave yourself 10 feet either side, and then you could run nice big trains through here, point to point, or maybe you do it as a loop. So this is the visible scene, and you have like one big staging yard behind the layout, so it disappears, it curves around, and then it goes to that staging yard. And then you have the ability to kind of continually run stuff through the scene. You could even do meets, like maybe one train comes in and has to wait for another train to pass. Yeah, there's a lot you could do depending on how it comes out. So I'm going to have a moment of just letting the music of the train speak for itself as we go through the scene. Had to get a screenshot of that. So there we have it. That is the Gulf Sub. I want to thank Jointed Rail sponsoring this episode of Great Train Layouts Live and providing these really colorful Gulf Coast leasing SD40s. They are just the sort of power that fits this layout really well. Whether you're just running one or if you want to challenge yourself like I did tonight and run two with this really kind of unique B unit here. So this is the Gulf Sub in HO, a 2x10-foot industrial switching layout that I think has really good replay power. Three things that I think make this layout great off the top of my head. You've got a nice mixture of industries being served from both directions. You have this really neat bridge scene with the track going above and under, and the fact that you could actually connect to that through the grade. And I would also say, I mean, this maybe is kind of a repeat, but having these different elevations in general, and the street running. Street running is such a nifty element of operation. You could create rules around that, around whether cars are on the grade. You make sure that you can't keep cars on the street portion. A lot that you could do with that. Looking at taking one last look at your comments. Rich, fantastic idea of adding a loop on the layout. I think that there's a lot you could do if you make this a run-through section. It could work. Like, if you had no extra room, you could make this work as a switcher. You do have head-end room off of either side. But if you could do fold-out cassettes, that gives you the ability to stage things off and bring them in, or just sending cars off and have interchange. But if you have room to curve the layout around and make it into a loop, it's such a nice scene. And I think that I will say that for me, I've built a switching layout, and it's a point to point. And even though I like switching, there's times when I just wish I could just watch the train go in circles. So I'm an advocate for, if there is a way to make your point to point a loop just for when you want to run trains go around, that is a thing to keep in mind. Potato Head, does the SD40-2 come with the route? Well, the SD40-2s are available from Jointed Rail now. You can purchase them on their site. So if you go to jointedrail.com and search Gulf Coast, you will find them. They're available for purchase. The route is not yet available for download because I just built it. It will be available for download probably in the next couple of months or so from the new website, which will be hopefully done by the next stream. I'd really like it to be. This past month has been crazy. I've been out on the road for Streamliner Media, which is my day job, which is doing film and media work for a wide variety of companies. And that took me out to Texas and Ohio, and those were great trips, but I am glad to be back. And so once I have time to get back to working on the website for Great Train Layouts, I will be doing that. And then this route, along with others, will be available there. So thank you for tuning in tonight. I appreciate you sticking along for the ride, and stay tuned for more episodes of the Roundhouse every single month. Hopefully in the next month or so, we've got the next episode of What Makes This Layout Great, which should be a Norfolk and Western train layout. Very big train layout. Until then, thank you so much for watching. I'm Nick Ozerak. You're a wonderful audience. And that's been what's made this layout great. Thank you. Have a good night. Cheers.